different scam.
Past the men where the cold numbers ring, past the market of mirrors that ask me to sing. A spark in my pocket, a compass of gold says step into daylight and walk on your own. They're tagging our shadows, they're leasing our names, selling us comfort in barcode chains. But truth isn't rented and courage won't fall. It clinks like a coin you can actually hold. If they're building a cage out of whispering wires, I'll strike a match on the bars till the mouth catches fire. Raise up the ladder of daylight higher than screams, higher than screams. Over the turnstiles of data and ministry dreams, ministry dreams. I'll pay with the freedom no tyrant can spend. If their road has no exits, we'll cut one at the end. They promised us safety for the price of our breath, a smooth little window that stares us to death. But barter and handshake and steel in the hand still purchase the living they don't understand. When the choir of comply harmonizes my fate, I'll answer with thunder from a sovereign state. Raise up the ladder of daylight higher than screams, higher than screams. Over the turnstiles of data and ministry dreams, ministry dreams. I'll pay with the freedom no tyrant can spend. If the road has no exits, we'll cut one at the end. There's a key made of silence, a code made of trust. When the panopticon trembles, it falls into dust. Count down the seconds till the signal is clean. We'll settle our debts where the ledger can't see. but one at the end. And when morning remembers the names we forgot, we'll be richer in daylight than any they bought. Told me it was safer, just a simple code to sign, a number for the future, but it didn't feel like mine.
Said the world was getting smaller, just a fingerprint away, but I can't hold my children through a screen of DNA.
Oh, it's easy to surrender when they promise you a sky, but freedom dies in comfort, one consent at a time. I won't sign my name in cold. I was born in blood and soul. You can take my data, you can read my eyes, but my heart's still mine to hold. I won't sign my name in cold. I'll sign my name in light.
I'll sign my... They say it's just identity, they say it's just the way, but every scan's a promise that our souls will fade to gray.
No more numbers on the altar, no more saints of silicone. We were meant for love,
not longing on.
You can map my face, you can mark my tone, but you'll never write my song. The melody belongs to every heart that's still holding on. I won't sign my name in code. I was born in love, not sold. Every chain they draw in wire will melt it down with choir fire. Oh, I'll sign my name in code. No, I'll sign my name in light. I'll sign my... Let the record show I was free,
That my name was written in love, not circuitry.
The bankers wrote their letters in shadows cold and deep, a promise forged of iron chains to bind us in our sleep. They called it just a progress, a digital decree, but freedom has no barcode and souls are not for leave. It's the final countdown, the reckoning of men. Crypto, gold, and silver rise where paper dies again. They dream of central power, of money's iron cage, but voices rise unbroken to light this modern age. From DC halls to Davos, the tyrants stake their claim. They preach of safety, justice, but hunger for the chain. They hide behind the slogans. They whisper, trust the plan. But every law they're passing just enslaves the common man. It's the final countdown, the reckoning of men. Crypto, gold, and silver rise where paper dies again. They dream of central power, of money's iron cage, but voices rise unbroken to light this modern age. The merchants and the dreamers, the rebels and the wise, take refuge in the ledgers where the watchful state can pry. In Zano's cloak of shadows, in Monero's quiet streams, they guard the ancient promise of liberty's old dream. It's the final countdown, the reckoning of men. Crypto, gold, and silver rise where paper dies again. They dream of central power, of money's iron cage, but voices rise unbroken to light this modern age. So raise your hands in firelight, let tyrants hear the sound. The people's last defiance is the truth that won't back down. It's more than just survival, it's more than just a stand. It's freedom's final chorus sung across this burning land.
Told me it was safer, just a simple code to sign, a number for the future, but it didn't feel like mine.
Said the world was getting smaller, just a fingerprint away, but I can't hold my children through a screen of DNA.
Oh, it's easy to surrender when they promise you the sky, but freedom dies in comfort, one consent at a time. I won't sign my name in cold. I was born in blood and soul. You can take my data, you can read my eyes, but my heart's still mine to hold. I won't sign my name in cold. I'll sign my name in light.
They say it's just identity, they say it's just the way, but every scan's a promise that our souls will fade to gray.
No more numbers on the altar. No more saints of silicone. We were meant for love, not longing on. You can map my face, you can mark my tone, but you'll never write my song. The melody belongs to every heart that's still holding on. I won't sign my name in code. I was born in love, not sold. Every chain they draw in wire will melt it down with choir fire. Oh, I'll sign my name in code. No, sign my name in light. I'll sign my. Let the record show I was free.
That my name was written in love, not circuitry.
Welcome back to the Aaron Day Show. This is season 2, episode 34. We have a very packed show tonight. There have been so many developments going on in the digital ID space globally that I wanted to do a deep dive just on this topic. I know obviously my area of particular focus is CBDCs, but it's all interrelated. It's all one technocracy. And this is an area where things are moving at an alarming pace. So I wanted to give an update on everything that's going on globally and then take a step back and just talk about generally what's going on with digital IDs and how it fits into technocracy more broadly. So quite a bit to discuss on that front. Just taking a step back and looking at the last couple of episodes, had a great episode last week called "The Technocrats Are Hijacking Maha," which, you know, may sound a little bit incendiary, but I think it's not the case. I encourage you to watch this episode and share it with all of your friends in the medical freedom community, because essentially what's happened is we have gone from, yes, we're fighting COVID and we're having some success winding some of the mandates to a certain degree. But at the same time, while that's going on, the administration is pushing AI and wearables, which is actually worse from the standpoint of surveillance. There's nothing medical freedom about either wearable mandates or what's going on with Palantir and other organizations and Oracle building health databases. Trump announced that, you know, they're building a genetic database of children with cancer. I mean, literally, it's the exact opposite. Trump also announced that they'll be selling prescription drugs directly through a direct-to-consumer website, cut a $70 billion deal with Pfizer. So on the whole, I would argue medical freedom is losing substantially. And part of the problem is that I think the Maha movement has been hijacked. The hope of the Maha movement has been hijacked, because the medical freedom community, in my experience in being an activist, is the most diehard community out there of activists. And right now they've put all their hope in either politics or in one person in the form of Bobby Kennedy. And it doesn't matter how great Bobby Kennedy may or may not be. This is not the path forward to medical freedom. And so please watch that episode. Please share that episode. And I hope to be talking more about that. I will be talking more about that at the next Technocracy Round Table on October the 22nd. I'll have more on that in a bit. The episode before that was on Trump's sovereign fund exposed. This is a very important issue in this general theme of tracking Curtis Yarvin, J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel, and what's actually going on within the administration, what's driving the administration, which also includes Elon Musk and the dark MAGA movement. And essentially what I'm putting forward is that, I mean, and he's explicit about it, there's an active movement to consolidate power in the executive branch, almost giving it monarchical power. And many feel that this is a good thing because clearly, the US is off the rails and we have administrative states and deep state and everything else, which is true. All of that is true. But I think most of the people that I know that support this are coming at it from the standpoint of, well, yes, we need to enhance executive powers to fix some of these things so that we can restore the Constitution. And as I've outlined in the last several episodes and will continue to moving forward, that's actually not what's going on. This was actually 5D chess from the PayPal mafia and people like Peter Thiel. The monarchy is the interim state to rolling out a technocracy. And so one of the keys to this, if you were going to give the executive branch more power, one of the things you'd give them the ability to do is have a sovereign wealth fund with very little oversight. And so we're already seeing that, for instance, the US now owns 10% of Intel. We own parts of Lithium Americas and a whole variety of other things. And this is continuing. Trump put out an executive order calling for a sovereign wealth fund. And so, again, if you were really pushing for a monarchy, giving a strong executive control over the nation's wealth and investments would be one of the critical ways you would go about doing that. Sovereign wealth funds control about $12 trillion worth of assets globally, which is 7% of the world's assets. So this is a major theme and something that most people aren't aware of. So I highly encourage you to check that out. I also encourage you to check out the AaronDayShow.com website. You'll notice I've updated the branding and quite a bit going on that front, which I'll talk about shortly. The live stream should be working. Maybe it's not. I'm trying to get this going on the back end. If not, let me see. Anyway, hopefully it will be going. If not, certainly we're obviously live streaming right now, and then the episodes will be saved through IPFS, so they will be censorship resistant long term, even if the live stream isn't functioning today. Also, want to point out that we've relaunched the Daylight Freedom website, and the Daylight Freedom website is basically a container for all of the other projects that we're working on and links to all of the other sites. So Freedom Forge, the AaronDayShow.com. So this is the one place to go if you want to see all of the projects and everything that Eileen and I are working on in regards to warning people about technocracy and also helping people build parallel solutions. On the events front, we have the Brownstone 5th Annual Conference and Gala coming up at the end of this month. I really encourage you to check that out. I'm going to be on a panel with Ed Dowd and one of the other Brownstone fellows. So it's the only economics-focused panel, but that should be exciting. And I encourage you to check out the speaker list. These are always some of the best events out there. So if you're new to the Aaron Day Show, the entire thrust of the content here and everything that we're focused on is what I see as the big war, which is technocracy versus freedom. And technocracy is essentially a system of governance where you have elites picking scientists and engineers to make decisions for people. So in essence, it's a system that started in the 1930s, in 1932. So it's not just a general word like technology, or it's not a word that means making things more efficient through technology. It's an actual ideology. It's a very much an authoritarian regime that actually at its core changes the entire economy to going from a price-based system based on supply and demand to an energy credit-based system. So you would have a digital currency that's essentially carbon credits. And then within that, you would have a social credit system and AI surveillance on top of that. And so to me, this is a battle for free will itself, because if you're in a position where you can't make decisions about your life because they're being determined for you by either scientists and engineers, or now the trend is to move towards having AI make those decisions through artificial general intelligence. So this is the real battle that's going on. And within that battle, I think the big battleground is actually tokenization, which is one of the ways that the technocrats are moving towards this global system where they have this control, is by creating digital tokens that represent all of our assets. And these are digital tokens that can be centrally programmed, centrally tracked, and can be censored. Tokenization isn't itself bad. There's a freedom version of it where you can tokenize your own assets and trade them, stocks, bonds, money, whatever it happens to be. And you can trade those privately without anyone being able to see the transactions. This is why I'm excited about Zano, and I see it as a big counter to the technocratic threat. However, make no mistake, tokenization is happening. CBDCs are a form of tokenization. Stablecoins are a form of tokenization, and it's the bad kind. And then we have the Clarity Act, which will involve tokenizing stocks, bonds, and commodities, which will be controlled by third parties, by governments and other third parties. And so this, to me, this is why I'm passionate about this and trying to educate people on how to get out of the system and to start building parallel economies that are private and decentralized. You'll note, by the way, I've changed the branding a bit. I've decided I'm sick of, I don't know about you, but I'm sick of this generic minimalist branding. All of big tech, everything has just turned into this, generic. Everything is a sans serif font. Everything is supposed to be completely minimal. I like the idea of clean design, but at the same time, what about beauty and what about aesthetics? And frankly, I think everything, I think this is part of the technocratic vision, is to just blur everything. Eventually you start by blurring genders, gearing people up for merging with technology. You start kind of blending everything together. So I think from an aesthetic perspective, I'm probably going to be changing the brands a bit on all of these sites and focusing on, kind of a better look. And in this case, kind of a richer, more abundant look. I kind of like this Art Deco vibe. So anyway, let me know what you think. But in any event, these are the three areas that we focus on. I mentioned earlier, one, warning people and helping people to wake up about what technocracy is, why it's a threat. Two, and this is actually the most important, the only way out of this, there are no white knights. It's not a question of whether it's Trump or Musk or RFK Jr. It's none of them. You are your own white knight. That is the only way out. We need to stop looking to other people. We need to reclaim our free will and start taking control of our own thoughts, our own emotions, and our own actions. And we have the ability to do that, but we are being heavily programmed by other institutions and increasingly by algorithms and technology. And so this is a part of what we do, is trying to educate people on how they're being programmed. A few episodes back, it went into quite some detail on social media and AI and the current algorithms in terms of, 70% of our traffic it's bots, basically. You have these, I even played a video clip where, there are places where there are 10,000 cell phones that are manned by 2 or 3 people, and all they are doing is generating fake engagement online. And then beyond that, freedom of reach, as Musk calls it, is essentially a form of social credit where he tweaks and determines the algorithm. I mean, this is not a public square. This isn't free speech, and it's largely focused on rage baiting. And the third area is the revolution will be tokenized. And this is, again, building parallel systems outside of the current system to battle the technocratic threats. I'm introducing something new today because it's occurred to me, it's become difficult to stay on top of what's going on. The increase in technocracy has been so substantial since Trump was elected. Not that it wasn't moving forward before, but it's actually mind-numbing. I mean, we now have Real ID, which is a digital ID. We have a backdoor CBDC. Other countries around the world are accelerating their CBDCs, putting in place digital ID, more AI surveillance, absolutely everywhere. And so what I'm introducing tonight, this is actually doesn't go into a lot of the detail, but I will share the detail either on the site or I'll figure out an appropriate place to put it. But we have to, come up with a scorecard, a framework of, okay, how are we doing? And how fast is technocracy going? And I would argue that if you think about this in terms of a DEFCON 5 type of situation, where in this case 5 is bad, I'd say we're already at a 3. And the dimensions that I'd measure this on our level of financial control. So where are we with things like CBDCs, stable coins, cashless mandates, debanking? Where are we with respect to digital identity, AI surveillance, data sovereignty, movement and control, communication, access to resources? So these are the elements of this scoring system. And I'm going to put this out for comment because, again, I came up with a framework for it, but I think it'd be useful for us to all have a common framework to look at to see. Because what I've noticed, one of the problems is that most of the technocracy creeps in very small increments, and so people don't notice it. But then when you actually take a step back and you look at, for instance, one of my area of focus, our money is already digital. It's already programmable. It doesn't need a blockchain or a bill to be passed. Our transactions are already being surveilled. Our money's already programmed. And so when you really start to take a step back, you realize we're already 80% of the way gone. And so I'm going to use this, at some point I'm going to publish this framework and then get comments on it. And then every podcast, or maybe not every, but every podcast or every other podcast, we're going to look at the news in the lens of what's going on in terms of the overall march of technocracy. And so I'll give you an example of some of the things that are going on right now that are accelerating technocracy. And the list is even longer than this. And I encourage you to always check out what Patrick Wood is doing at technocracy.news and to sign up for his email list because he sends out a daily update on what's going on with technocracy. But we have now 5,500 secure digital ID enrollment kiosks that have been deployed across the United States, overseen by a federal digital identity office. And so, this is probably not great news. Obviously, this kind of a kiosk is just more accelerating the percentage of people that are participating in real ID, which, as we'll get to tonight, is a digital ID. And at the same time, Treasury is currently developing aggressive new approaches for tracking digital assets and requesting proposals for integrating AI surveillance. So this is all going on right now. And when you start to understand the Clarity Act and the Genius Act and all of this, once you layer AI on top of that, it is the complete surveillance of not just your money, but the movement of every asset that you own. And that's happening very quickly, and most people don't even know about it. In at least 3 metropolitan areas, companies have been contracted for new citywide deployments of AI-driven surveillance. It goes on and on and on. So I'm going to figure out a way to, once we get the kind of the scorecard down, a framework so that we can look at the news and assess where we are. And I don't have a lot of optimism that we're going to be reversing any of these trends because remember, most people think that we're winning, or a lot of people think that we're winning. People think, Alex Jones thinks we're defeating the globalists, which that's pretty remarkable when you actually look at what's going on around the world and in the United States. The second tracker that I want to put in place is, where are we on the monarchy scale? And so again, this goes back to my conversations about Curtis Yarvin, who's been actively promoting and pushing the idea that the United States needs a monarch or a dictator or a CEO to take more power and more control, and that form of governance works better than democracy. And I'm not going to democracy. We're not supposed to be a democracy. We're supposed to be a constitutional republic. But he's arguing that we need this type of position. Although I saw today, it just came up on my feed that he's thinking about leaving the United States and he's worried about the next election. But nevertheless, that's not germane to this conversation. But I want to, put together similarly a set of metrics for how would you measure how much power is being gained by the executive branch and how close are we getting to a monarchy. And so some dimensions I'd measure on that are executive overreach, emergency powers, political persecution, speech control, constitutional erosion, power consolidation, ruled by decree, and obviously the sovereign wealth fund would fit into that as well. So I'm looking at my notes on this, but obviously I'll circulate this around as well. Because I think, when I talk to people, I'm not just on this podcast, but off the podcast that are working on technocracy and trying to get the information out there. I think this kind of framework, it might be helpful because it will also help people because they can see, okay, here's how we measure this and here's what's actually going on. It gives a framework for starting to make sense of what's going on in these areas. So those are two things. I'd already started to mention the next Technocracy Roundtable, which includes Courtney Turner, Patrick Wood, Craig and myself. That will be October the 22nd at 6 p.m. And the focus on that one is going to be AI and healthcare. And this is a big topic. This is going to be a big extension of what I started to talk about last week when I highlighted just the extent to which AI and big tech has infiltrated MAGA and MAHA. It's something that needs to be understood. I'm getting comments here. I will get to this. Do you envision supporting private chat in some way? How does someone get in contact with others in the community? You can, right now you can sign up for free at theaarondayshow.com, and we have registered accounts. There's a commenting system, and I may very well add a community function to that if there's demand for something like that. Or I might even set up a group using Zano and Matrix, which I'm going to talk about briefly in this conversation, but that is a good idea. And so one way or another, whether it's directly through my site or through some of these other tools, we'll work on that. And so that's a great suggestion. So tonight's topic, so now we're going to get into the heart of the issue. So, I mean, so this has been shocking, right? What I'm about to tell you may seem hyperbolic, although maybe not if you're listening to this podcast, but it's a documented fact. And we really are in an emergency situation. I mean, we're very soon going to wake up and find we're in a digital cage with no way out. Between July and October of this year, in 90 days, 17 countries have implemented mandatory digital ID systems. These weren't broadly announced. We're not talking about announced or proposed, implemented. So, while people have been watching the news about Trump's latest appointments or conspiracy theories about Charlie Kirk or the latest battles amongst influencers, essentially 3 million people were digitally enslaved. But here's what should terrify you. The speed of implementation has gone exponential. What took Klaus Schwab 20 years to plan is now happening in months. What Bill Gates spent a decade building through ID 2020 was deployed in weeks. The technocracy isn't coming, it's here. And it's accelerating at a pace that I didn't predict. I mean, I wrote a book. I wrote The Final Countdown 3 years ago or so. And the whole point of that was to warn people about CBDCs, but in the broader context of technocracy. And when I originally wrote it, people were like, oh, this is nuts. Or are you nuts? And then it turns out I wasn't nuts enough. I wasn't, apparently startling enough about what's going on. So let's put this in perspective. It took 15 years to get Real ID passed, and another, so 15 years to get Real ID passed. So it's been nothing but back and forth, and then all of a sudden, Trump is in, and within 90 days, we have Real ID. Mobile driver's licenses went from a concept to 11 states in 3 years. So it's already digital. Real ID is already digital in 11 states. Ethiopia enrolled 16 million people in their digital ID program in 18 months. Mexico mandated biometric IDs for every citizen with full corporate compliance required by law, and they did it in one announcement. The UK, which is supposed to be a bastion of Western democracy, received, I think now it's up to 2.8 million signatures against its digital ID. And Parliament debated it, and the public opposed it by -14%. And what happened? I mean, Parliament was bypassed entirely, and they're implementing it through ministerial decree. Democracy didn't just fail, it was executed on live television, and nobody did anything about it. Maybe Curtis Yarvin can move to the UK. It seems like Keir Starmer's more up his alley. But why this sudden acceleration? Why now? Why are we seeing the coordination across 17 countries in 90 days? In my opinion, I think they're preparing for something. And everything to me points to a manufactured crisis. If I had to guess, I'd guess a cyber attack that would be blamed on anonymous transactions or privacy tools or decentralized networks, the things that I've been trying to tell people to start using for quite some time now. And I think that when that happens, they'll use it to justify an immediate mandatory adoption for digital ID. Again, when you look at what's going on, why now? Why in all these countries? And why doing it largely behind the scenes, with the exception of the UK, which a lot of noise has been made about that, but mostly people didn't hear about what was going on in the other countries. So there'll be no gradual rollout, no voluntary adoption. Just all of a sudden, overnight, you'll need a digital ID for everything, or you'll be locked out of society. So look at the infrastructure they've built at breakneck speed. Palantir now has real-time access to every government database in America. Their Gotham system is running predictive algorithms on every citizen. They're not hiding it. Their CEO, Alex Karp, admits on camera they could track everyone if we eviscerate civil liberties. Well, guess what? Those civil liberties are already gone. The Fourth Amendment is dead, has been for a long time. The surveillance state is already operational. CBDCs are ready to launch. And if you look at this, I mean, I would argue what's happened with the Genius Act is a backdoor CBDC that captures $27 trillion $27 trillion a year worth of transaction volume, all in one act. But what's going on beyond that is China already has a CBDC. Countries representing 98% of the global GDP are working on CBDCs, and now it's being accelerated around the world. So at the end, what we're going to end up is, whether you call it a stable coin regulated by governments and central banks or a direct CBDC, we're going to be dealing with programmable, trackable, censorable digital money at a speed and rate I was not even projecting prior to the election. The AI surveillance architecture is complete. Facial recognition is already largely in every major city. Behavioral prediction algorithms are already running. Social credit scoring is being tested in places like Bologna, Italy, and Darwin, Australia. Your phone is continuously verifying your biometrics to the government every time you unlock it with Face ID. They've built the digital prison. They've tested the systems. They've proven they can freeze bank accounts instantly. Just ask the Canadian truckers or any of the number of our friends who have been debanked over the years. They've shown that they can lock us out of employment, as we're hearing about in the UK. They've demonstrated that they can starve us into compliance. See Ethiopia. The cage is built. They're just waiting for the right crisis to lock the door. And when the cyber attack comes and when the financial system crashes due to anonymous hackers, they'll present digital IDs, and CBDCs is the only solution for our safety, for our security, to protect us from the terrorists, the money launderers, and the extremists. This is what they're going to use. This is always what they hold out. And most people, panicked and desperate, will walk right into the cage. I mean, this is the problem. There are a lot of people like, oh, well, look, we defeated them on COVID. And I'm like, you've accepted and even cheered on more of an increase in technocracy in the last 9 months, and you're not even aware of it. And that's the problem that's going on. We might not fall for something that's exactly like COVID again, but I see no indication that people are broadly applying these principles, because they don't understand that what's driving it all is technocracy. So they've assumed that we will comply, and they've assumed that we have no alternatives. And that's the part where there is still time, and hopefully they're wrong. So right now, as they accelerate their control grid, we're building the counter economy. Zano provides completely anonymous transactions and the ability to tokenize assets. You have things like Matrix that allow and enable encrypted communications that they can't monitor. Freedom Dollar, which I'm going to talk about exclusively on Thursday. I'm going to walk through Freedom Dollar, which is a privacy algorithmic stablecoin built on Zano. I think is probably one of, if not the best counter that we have to technocracy, and best counter that we have to CBDCs and government regulated and central bank regulated stablecoins. Those aren't theoretical solutions. These are operational right now. I use these on a daily basis. I haven't used a personal bank account since 2019, and I've moved exclusively into privacy coins over the last year. So while they spent decades building their prison, we have been building an escape route. And while they have created digital slavery, we are creating digital freedom. But I think it's critical. I think we maybe have as little as 90 days before the door slams shut. I mean, this is why I'm doing Freedom Dollar and I'm probably going to start doing one of the 2 podcasts that I do each week exclusively on solutions and walking people through what they can do to move into these systems, because we are at that point now, and we need a critical mass of people, or otherwise, again, it's no fun watching the train wreck happen when you have enough lead time to hopefully at least get people off of the track. So this is not a drill. It's not a warning about the future. This is an emergency broadcast about what's happening right now. And I hope with what I show you tonight, you will realize that there's no reason to be complacent about any of these programs. We're no longer talking about digital ID and CBDCs as something in the distant future. We're no longer talking about AI surveillance as something that might happen in the future. It's already launched. These things are at various phases of deployment, and the entire rate is essentially accelerating. So with that, I'm going to walk through the presentation tonight. I have a few video clips and some interesting things. If you would like and share this one has, we only have 538 people right now. I will say, and I mentioned this last week, 100% topics related to technocracy are shadow banned. And I will tell you, so, the Curtis Yarvin episode that I did on X was the worst traffic I've had probably since I started doing the podcast. Yet on iTunes and Spotify, it was the top performing podcast I've ever had. So this information is being shadow banned. So if you think again, because you can talk about COVID now, that you have free speech. Yes, you can talk about the thing that happened 5 years ago where none of the people that need to be held accountable or currently hold office or are running these platforms. Yes, you can talk about those things, but you can't talk about the thing that is the present active COVID right now, because they are owned by the technocrats. Musk owns X. Larry Ellison now increasingly owns a bit of everything: TikTok, Oracle, CBS, Paramount, Peter Thiel, JD Vance, Vivek owned a big piece of Rumble. So it's on and on and on. So I really would appreciate if you could share this, because this is a difficult situation to get this information out, and I think it's going to get more difficult. And I started doing podcasts in March of 2020, which were educational podcasts trying to show people how to get off of big tech so that you could talk about COVID related topics. And it only took a week before that was shadow banned. So I have the same feeling right now. And even looking at these numbers right now, I'm thinking that is the case. So with that, between July and October, the most significant expansion of surveillance infrastructure in human history happened in 90 days. 17 countries implemented digital ID systems while the media had us watching anything else, frankly. And it wasn't organic growth. It was a coordinated deployment. So let me give you a summary of what's happened here. On July the 1st, Vietnam mandated electric e-identities for all businesses. July 24th, Mexico started requiring biometrics. September 25th, UK bypasses Parliament and moves towards a digital ID system. In October, Laos, PNG, and Zambia activate. And the thing about these 17 countries, when you dig into it, they're all using the same 3 contractors. So by my count, I mean, we're talking about stuff that affects, billions of people. Every continent is now covered. And we're looking at completion dates of 2026 to 2027 globally. So I want you to think about that in terms of what most people have been worried about is Agenda 2030 and Klaus Schwab and everything else. And a lot of the people that I've talked to have just taken this approach that, Klaus Schwab resigned, even though, he was replaced by Larry Fink, but that somehow the globalists are waning in influence. They're not. And as I said last week, I think Agenda 2030 is going to happen by 2028, and not necessarily in the form of the thing pushed by the UN, but all of the things that are encompassed by UN Agenda 2030 are looking like they're going to happen ahead of time. So the fact that with these digital IDs, we're looking at a 2026 to 2027 completion date should be horrifying. Also, when you dig into it, you see that there's interoperability built in from day one because you have some of the same contractors working on this. These systems are all designed to work together. So I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But essentially, what you're seeing is in these rollouts, you're seeing the exact identical justification language is being used in every case. It's copy pasta. Financial inclusion appears in every announcement. They use the same technical standards, something called ISO 18013-5. World Bank is funding multiple countries simultaneously. I wrote about this in my book, that the World Bank is essentially a vehicle for pushing these types of policies on developing nations in a coordinated fashion, often using them as pilots to test some of this. So the theory being, if we can get this kind of surveillance working in this small country that may have challenging demographics or minimal internet access, whatever it happens to be, then we're going to be able to get it working anywhere. And that has been a trend. The Tony Blair Institute is advising 40 plus nations. So with that, let me show you how Mexico became the blueprint for North American surveillance. So we have in the Mexican system, they have an 18-character prison number. This is a unique identifier that you're assigned for life. It contains your complete biometric profile. There's a QR code with your embedded personal data. It can't be changed, refused, or appealed. It links to all government databases instantly. There is a corporate compliance mandate. Companies are now legally required to accept and verify. Non-compliance means immediate business closure. Real-time government database access is required. No warrant is needed for authorities to access. It's a complete employment surveillance system, essentially. So any company must provide immediate database access. Authorities can track anyone within seconds. Complete location history available on demand. Social network mapping automatically generated. Total population control. Infrastructure is complete. So Mexico just made history as the first company to make it illegal for companies not to track their employees. So I'm going to play a video clip about this that you might find interesting. Let me see. We have here. Here we go.
Their existing population code, the CRP Unique Population Registry Code, and made it a mandatory biometric ID for every single citizen.
Mandatory being the key word there.
Exactly. We're talking a national digital ID card, essentially. It's got your personal details, photos, fingerprints, even iris scans, all bundled into a QR code. Now, the CRP itself, that's not new. It's been around since '96. But making the biometrics compulsory, that's the game changer. This was flagged in a biometric update article just last week, July 25th.
And the timeline they've set is, well, ambitious is maybe putting it mildly.
Right. They're aiming for a gradual rollout, supposed to be all done by February 2026. But get this.
Biometric CERP, and is it obligatory? Mexico's Congress last month approved reforms to existing laws that allow for the creation of an identity document that contains biometric data, including fingerprints and iris scans. Supported by President Claudia Sheinbaum and the ruling Morena Party, the reforms to the laws enabled the creation of the CERP Biometric CERP, took effect on July 17th after the publication of a decree in the federal government's official gazette the previous day. The CERP, or Unique Population Registry Code, is an existing national identification code for all citizens and legal residents of Mexico.
How much of your identity is truly, well, yours in this digital age? It's a question that feels more pressing all the time, doesn't it?
It really does. Technology is just so woven into our lives now.
Exactly. And today, we're doing a deep dive into something really compelling, maybe a bit concerning, developing in Mexico around digital identity.
That's right.
We got a news report from Biometric Update, their big name in the biometrics industry, you know.
Very focused on the sector.
And we also have this really critical analysis. It's called SIF's take. Quite provocative.
It is. And that's where the real tension lies, I think.
Our mission today is to unpack these sources, especially digging into SIF's perspective, to really understand what Mexico's new mandatory biometric identifier means. You know.
So I'd be curious in the comments how many of you were aware of what was going on with Mexico, because I was not entirely aware of what's going on, and I didn't realize it was to this extent. And so, just from a development standpoint, by October 15th of this year, all government authorities are required to accept this biometric CURP, as it's called, for identification. From November the 14th, it will be mandatory for all school enrollments, including for children. Full obligatory use for all adults and children is scheduled for February 2026. So this is it. This is the model. I mean, who would have thought that it would be Mexico, right? So again, curious to see in the comments if you were aware of the fact that there was a complete and total comprehensive digital ID system with biometrics and everything tied to a QR code that had been mandated in Mexico. And that's just one, again, of 17 countries. So what is coming? Why is all of this happening at the same time? And if you look at this, obviously, if you think the Mexican situation is bad, you probably have heard about what's going on in the UK, which is that on September the 25th, the UK government received 1.2 million petitions against their digital ID. I mean, I think that was like right out of the gates. Again, last time I checked, and I haven't even been able to get the full update today because I've been working on the presentation, but last check, it was 2.8 million. And public support had collapsed from initially plus 35% to now negative 14%. So Parliament debated it and overwhelmingly opposed it. And so what did the government do? They bypassed Parliament entirely and implemented it through a ministerial decree and made it mandatory for all employees, for all employment by 2029. So democracy didn't just fail, it was truly executed on live television. And I will show you a clip. This is a consolidated clip from a couple of different perspectives so that you can see what is going on the ground there. I think this is the right one.
Now, this all started with me getting the ump because the government were telling me what car to drive. The 2030 zero emission vehicle mandate and all the rest of it, stating that by 2030, we will all be driving milk floats. You will not be able to buy a petrol car. You will not be able to buy a diesel car. And I hate being told what to do and what I can't do. And as I keep saying to all the floaterati, this is about choice. This is about having a choice. That's all it is. It's about not being dictated to over what you can or can't drive. There should be a choice. Oh, you just want to go back to the horse and cart. You would have been protesting about the motor car back then. No, I wouldn't, because nobody said, shoot the fucking horse. You can't have that no more. That never happened, did it? It was a case of, would you like a car? Yes, I would. Would you like to stay with the horse and cart? Yes, I will, because I don't feel that the motor car technology is actually worthwhile at the moment, and I'd like to wait until something better comes along. Sound familiar? Plus, my horse would do more than 15 mile an hour, which is all the bloody Model T Ford did anyway. And my horse was lovely, and I could talk to it. Can't talk to a Model T. It splutters. Anyway, that's not the reason for this. The reason for this is that, obviously, the government announced last week that they're going to introduce digital IDs. And I've had my fair share to say about it. In fact, I'm wearing right now, you can't see it because the camera angle doesn't quite fit, but this T-shirt says, here's my, and then that's two fingers sticking up, and underneath it says digital ID. You can buy one of these T-shirts. The link's in my bio. Because obviously it's the worst idea since, insert your own analogy here, since my first marriage. So as soon as they announced it, somebody started a petition, one of these government petitions, and it took off quite quickly. I think it's been running for 5 days, that's all. And it now has, I've written the number on my hand, except I can't read it without my glasses on, hang on. 2,758,000.
You will know exactly how this could affect your daily life. The announcement breakdown. So here's what we know. On Thursday, September 25th, 2025, Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced plans for a mandatory digital ID scheme for every adult in Britain. This isn't just a proposal. This is happening, though it will need consultation and legislation.
have another problem. People say, no, it's all right. We'll have a Bill of Digital Rights. A Bill of Digital Rights will be the back door for digital ID and the end of freedom. Stop digital ID! Stop digital ID! Stop digital ID! And of course, let's say,
Millions have signed up to oppose digital ID cards in the UK. More than 2.4 million people have signed an online petition demanding that the UK government immediately commits to not introducing digital ID cards. Petition creator Maxim Sutcliffe argues that introducing digital ID cards would be a step towards mass surveillance and digital control, and no one should be forced to register with a state-controlled ID system. Sir Keir Starmer announced last week that the UK government would introduce a new ID system by 2029 that would be mandatory for people working in the UK. The Do Not Introduce Digital ID Cards petition is now entitled to a written response from the UK government and is currently being considered by the Petitions Committee for debate in Parliament. Labour backbencher Bel Ribeiro Andy said the petition shows people do not understand the purpose of this move. But the Prime Minister said he was absolutely convinced that one of the reasons migrants travelled through France to reach the UK was that it was easier to work illegally here.
Today, I am announcing this government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
You clicked on this video because you saw the number, over 2 million signatures, and you wondered, how in the world did that happen so fast? And you might think this is just another political debate, a back and forth about a new government policy. But what if I told you that this isn't about an ID card at all? Because what the government is proposing isn't just an upgrade, it's an entirely new system. A system built on the premise that they should have a single, unified database of your entire life. And what I'm about to show you, what the data reveals, is that they didn't just make a mistake. They walked into the exact same trap a previous government fell into. But this time, the trap is a whole lot scarier. Okay, let's break it down. September 26th, 2025. Prime Minister Keir Starmer stands up and he delivers a speech that on the surface feels pragmatic. He says his government is taking a tough stance on immigration. He says he wants to tackle the black market economy, and he says the solution is a new digital identity.
So there you have it. I mean, this was pretty fast and pretty, unprecedented in terms of, I mean, it kind of came a little bit out of nowhere. And so now, as you heard from the clips, you will not be able to work anywhere without this digital verification. So right to work checks will be completely digitized, and this applies to all employment, not just if you work for a large corporation. This will apply to self-employed, to contractors, to the gig economy, even to Uber drivers. So this is a massive mandate. And what I think it's intended to do, and again, this is the kind of thing Curtis Yarvin says that he's in favor of, this kind of power, this subversion of democracy. This is an example of how to do this. This is a case study of how you can bypass democracy entirely. This is a perfect example of the administrative state being triumphant over elected officials. Public opinion is completely irrelevant. The protests achieved absolutely nothing. Now they have a template. And believe me, they're going to use it. And before people say, oh, well, God, I'm glad they're not doing that here, we've already accepted it. People don't even realize they already accepted real ID. We already have a digital ID. It's frustrating watching people point fingers at how bad it is everywhere else when people don't even realize we innovated on this surveillance. But we'll get to that. So while the UK was destroying democracy, Ethiopia pioneered using banking as a weapon of total control. There's a comment here. How can we be certain that Zano won't be affected? What are some of the ways it could shut down? So, I mean, this is the thing. Zano is a decentralized protocol. There's no centralized corporate entity. The transactions are private. I fully expect it to be banned in certain countries. I mean, the EU is already talking about banning privacy coins by 2027. That doesn't stop it from actually working, and it doesn't stop it from remaining private. The thing that you have to understand about all this is we're not going to comply our way out of technocracy. If we think we're going to follow the rules and beat the people that are not using the rules, that are subverting the Constitution, then we've already lost. That is the biggest problem that people, well, I don't want to do this because, there's nothing illegal about Zano currently. But I mean, I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to do this because this might become illegal. Do you realize you've basically already lost? You've pretty much surrendered your free will anyway. You might as well get ready for your pod. Because if you're unwilling to use legal things that are actually constitutional or even, kind of reinforce the Constitution, then you'll pretty much accept anything. So, but there's always risk. I mean, don't be clear. Let me be clear. There are risks with everything. There's risks with Zano. There's risks with Monero. There's risk with every technology. This is an ongoing war of technocracy versus freedom. So there's absolutely nothing guaranteed about any of it. I will talk about, and I can't remember, I think it was episode 25. I did an episode entirely dedicated to the Zano ecosystem, but I'm going to be breaking that down into pieces and then providing other videos and other tools as well. So, Sylvia, if everyone does not comply in the UK, I mean, sure, that could happen. It should happen, but we haven't seen a lot of success with non-compliance. I mean, I think COVID was a good ramp up for this. What was the percentage of uptake on the vaccine in the UK? I mean, if they got people to do that, then how hard is it to get them to do digital ID? I mean, realistically. And if what you're saying is you can't work and you can't collect a paycheck, how many people are going to be willing to actually forego that or be willing to actually fight that out? I mean, you've got lead time. There are steps that people could take, but inevitably people will wait until the last minute and then they'll say, well, there's nothing I could have done about it. When the reality is the stuff that you can do about it is right now. And as I have said time and time again, the single best tool to fighting technocracy is to ditch fiat currency. Stop using currency that is backed by government debt. If you stop using their money, that is what halts them. Voting will fix nothing. You have zero ability to change the political system. We'll do another podcast on this. My wife and I have 40 years of experience trying that, but I mean, I can document what it would take to win politically. It's over. Politically is over. The best thing that you can do is not fight, but to take your energy, and money is a form of energy, out of the system and put it into alternatives, because you cannot win a rigged game, but you can build a parallel system. And what their system requires is essentially 100. They're expecting nearly 100% compliance. So you don't have to get 50% plus one to actually stop their system. You only need a few percent, and really the ability to show people that it can be done. Because that's the big problem with a lot of this, is that we're always playing defense. We're not creating the alternative. At best, what we're doing is stopping one part of the technocracy from moving in one way. But overall, over the past 90 years, the technocracy's only been moving in one direction. Maybe a blip here or a blip there. There is no pendulum that's been swinging. Tell me about the pendulum that's swinging in the surveillance space. Since World War II, has the pendulum swung towards privacy once? When it comes to financial surveillance, has the pendulum gone towards privacy once since 1970, the Bank Secrecy Act? It has not. There has not been any revocation of any of the financial surveillance, and there won't be. So accept that and then move into these alternative systems. I can't stress that. I can't stress that enough. So now we'll talk about Ethiopia. On January the 1st of this year, Ethiopia mandated the FADA digital ID for all banking in the nation's capital. No ID means no bank account, which means no economic existence. They've already enrolled 16.4 million people. They're targeting 90 million by 2027. But here's what makes it terrifying. The World Bank is funding this with $120 million, and they're calling it financial inclusion. They're not banking the unbanked. They're digitally enslaving them. So again, it's a financial execution. Banking is literally impossible without this digital ID. December 2026, nationwide mandatory implementation. Cash is being systematically removed from circulation. International transfers require ID verification. Complete economic surveillance grid activated. And by the way, there's a lot more that I need to research on this. I mean, I travel to Mexico quite a bit. What are the implications of these digital IDs for people coming in from outside of the country? I saw last week that the EU was looking at tightening up the requirements and scans and what kind of information foreigners and U.S. citizens would have to provide. So this has real implications in a variety of ways. Even if you opted out of the real ID here now, what's going on in these other countries may affect international travel. So that's something I'll dig more research and follow more closely as we get more updates. And it's something that I'll throw into that technocracy index that I was talking about. So 16.4 million captured already. Children are enrolled within the first 120 days of birth. By the way, we have a huge problem with all of this, with fighting the technocracy and these digital IDs, which is that the younger generations don't even understand the need for privacy or don't even have an expectation of it. And I don't have a solution for that, by the way. We that is something that we need to work on. Younger generations do not have the healthy distrust of authority that others have, and it's quite the problem. So the Ethiopia model is now being exported to Zambia. Kenya, Nigeria, and Ghana are also following the identical playbook. This is the perfect CBDC preparatory infrastructure. The population has no ability to resist. So now let me show you the proof that this was all coordinated from a single source. 17 countries, 90 days, identical contractors, same timeline, matching language word for word. So when this many nations move in coordination and perfect synchronization, it's not governance. It's clearly a coordinated coup against humanity. And again, please tell me in the comments, were you aware of this? Were you aware that 17 countries were coordinating the rollout of a digital ID? I wasn't. I mean, I've heard bits and pieces of some things, but nothing that raised, by the time you look into the thing's already been signed into law. So you have the Thales Group, which is operating in 30 plus countries. They're one of the contractors. IDEMIA is another one of the contractors. They have a presence in 180 countries, and they serve 4 billion people. And then Accenture, which is a big U.S. consulting firm that has $10 billion in government contracts. Those are the big three involved in the construction and the rollout of the digital ID in these 17 countries. And of course, BlackRock has a huge ownership stake in all three. So again, the timeline is locked step, all targeting a 2026, 2027 completion. Identical phasing patterns, same technical standards, all interoperable amongst the countries. There's no deviation permitted from the timeline. And when you look at the language that they all rolled out when they announced this, here were the 5 big points that they all stressed: financial inclusion, streamlined services, security enhancement, digital transformation, and they actually used the same PR firm. So I guess 4 points and then another kind of related point. So they actually literally used the same propaganda machine to push this. Watch these words: financial inclusion. What does that even mean? I mean, look, with crypto, it's complete. It's financial inclusion right out of the gates. You don't have to require. I don't see how requiring people to get a digital ID is anything but exclusionary. And so when you look at this, and it's always streamlined, right? It's always, this is going to make things more efficient. This is the thing that the technocrats always say. This is why people bought Doge. Doge was a psyop. Doge was about connecting Palantir to the databases within the American government. It was not about reducing cost. It was about pushing technocracy. Musk is a technocrat. It served its mission. It did not save the taxpayers any money. digital transformation, security enhancement. These are always security for who? Whose security is enhanced by this? It is a control system. The World Bank has invested $850 million into this. The Gates Foundation, $200 million. And there's something like $100+ billion of government contracts allocated for this purpose. So same funding sources are reappearing globally. This is clearly centrally controlled. But how are they forcing 3 billion people to comply? Well, through 4 weapons of coercion that make resistance impossible. So now we'll talk about the enforcement mechanism. So these are the big ones. You have work prohibition. So what you saw Keir Starmer say, the UK right to work requires digital verification. So somebody asked, okay, well, what if people don't comply? Well, if you're unable to work, that's going to be a pretty big barrier. You're going to have to figure out a way to begin trading with people outside of the entirety of the surveillance system, all of it. This is why digital ID and digital currency are completely linked. They're completely tied together. And so you need to exit both. And this is a control point. So even if you didn't have a digital ID, if you're using a digital currency that's programmed and trackable centrally, I mean, it almost doesn't even matter if you have a digital ID, frankly, at that point, because they can shut off your money anyway and track your money. But nevertheless, this just makes it that much easier. And by the way, I haven't seen any examples in any of the rollout here of where, the government is going to be providing transparent access to their transactions. This is stuff that only applies to the people and not to the government, which in the US is supposed to be the exact opposite, not necessarily in all of these other countries. So you have the work prohibition, then you have corporate enforcement. So you have Mexico, companies must comply or face immediate closure. Vietnam, business licenses require EID verification. Costa Rica, the 6-month compliance deadline has now already passed. The penalties include imprisonment for executives. This is how far up this goes. This isn't just if you don't do this, it's a fee. I mean, I think we kind of slow failed our way into digital ID here with real ID. But here you're seeing kind of the other end of it. Because it's always assumed, a lot of people are like, well, they're just going to use a carrot, or they're going to offer us a greater interest rate if we take a CBDC. No, I mean, chances are what they'll do is, like they're doing here, a gigantic coordinated effort where they're going to ram it down your throat, and then they're going to come up with 3 or 4 different ways that you can't get out of it. So it's a complete economic death sentence. You now can't earn any income without the ID. You can't hire anyone without verification. They're trying to target the underground economy specifically. Family businesses are included in the requirements. So it is total economic exclusion from society. And employment is just the first weapon. Let me show you how they're using banking to complete the trap. So again, this is why I exited the bank in 2019. You're not going to reform the bank. The banks are not going to add technology that's going to give you any privacy. That's not a thing. That's not happening anywhere. That's not proposed anywhere. So in Ethiopia, no digital ID, no bank account. In Vietnam, biometric verification required for all transactions. In Zambia, financial services are tied to your digital identity. They're not providing banking access. They're creating financial prisoners. And once CBDCs launch on this infrastructure, escape becomes impossible. And by the way, going back a few episodes that I did on the SARA and JASARA and the quantum financial system, no, they're not going to be using XRP or XRLM or whatever the hell you think your blockchain is to do this. Not that you should want them to be doing it anyway. I'm not sure why people get excited about the prospect that their digital currency or their blockchain might be used in enslaving people. Oh, you're going to make money. You're going to see fiat gains enslaving people. But the truth is your coin's not going to be involved in that either. They want more complete and direct control. This is why the United States had pursued 3 different CBDC pilots. MIT has actually been involved in all 3 US CBDC pilots, but then they're working with other countries like Germany and others on consulting on what they learned during the US pilot, which was a pilot that could do 1.7 million transactions per second. So keep in mind, the stuff that they're building, they've been building for years. It works. We're not at there's almost this sense of, well, it's like the Obamacare website where it didn't work and it was a complete disaster. Nobody could sign up and, hey, it's the government. They can't do anything right. It's not the government rolling this out or developing it. It's some of the smartest programmers in the world funded by some of the largest financial institutions. So don't think that that you have time because you think it's a government developed program. The government may be funding aspects of it, but the government has nothing to do with the development at all. And in the US, the Project Hamilton CBDC actually even had a couple of Bitcoin Core developers involved. So here are some of the important points here. So you have an account lockout. So existing accounts are frozen without a digital ID. New accounts are impossible without biometric verification. International transfers are blocked without an ID. Savings become inaccessible instantly. And even inheritance itself requires family ID verification. Every payment is tracked to your identity. AI analyzes spending patterns. Instant account freezing capability is built in. Social credit scoring infrastructure is prepared, and the CBDC rails are ready for activation. So again, global coordination, same banking rules implemented worldwide. You have the SWIFT system fully integrated with digital ID, cross-border transactions tracking active. No safe banking jurisdiction exists anymore. This is the complete global financial control matrix that people have been worried about. And again, just if you're celebrating stable coins, I will tell you, I guarantee you that the timeline for all of this was accelerated because of the Genius Act and because of the US policy on stablecoins. So this is not a win. All we're getting everywhere globally is more digital control over money and more digital identification. There has been zero movement in the other direction. It has only accelerated towards complete digital control. So Thailand just mandated biometric verification for all SIM cards. So they're using liveness detection that can't be spoofed. So literally real-time tracking is active on every call. They're not just listening to your conversations, they're controlling who's allowed to have them. No digital ID means no phone, no internet, and no ability to organize resistance. So again, what do we think is coming? I mean, Klaus Schwab and others were working on this. They were planning for a cyber attack years ago. It seems like it's the most likely thing that's coming next because they've just built the solution to it. So anyway, this SIM card thing is a pretty big weapon. So by the way, I encourage you, and I'm going to be exploring this and, having potentially classes on this as well, how to get a de-Googled phone, how to move into some of these other areas. There's a lot that has to happen here, and it has to happen all at once. I think for me, trying to figure out how to create the educational material, I may create like an online university or whatever for it, not like charge for it, but to make the materials available and really, easy to understand formats, and to expand not just, the financial realm and tokenization, but bring in maybe other people that can help in some of these other areas, because this is an attack vector, right? If they did that here, this would be problematic. They've been talking about this, notice some of the other things that have been going on outside of the digital ID thing. You've seen this in Australia. We've seen this in New Zealand. We've seen it in England, where there's this big movement now. And when I was in DC, I remember the senator was trying to get people out of the hearing where Toby Rogers kind of destroyed proved the case about the link between autism and vaccines. But one of the senators was trying to get people to go to this, on protecting children online hearing instead. But what all of this is moving towards is what you're seeing in these countries where, well, you have to prove you're 16 years old in order to be able to access the internet. Well, guess what? If If you're over 16, you still have to prove that you're over 16 years old. So by saying that, you know what I mean? So essentially it's a digital ID requirement for everyone, but they're using protecting children as the justification for it. So this has been going on for a while, long before they just shoved this other digital ID stuff. So again, SIM card biometric registration is now mandatory. Liveness detection prevents any spoofing. Existing numbers are deactivated without compliance. Burner phones are completely eliminated. Anonymous communication is now impossible. And so, yeah, Leah says, no phone or internet. How do I get into Zano? De-Googled phone, can't use ZBEC MasterCard. So there's a continuum for all of this. So using the ZBEC MasterCard is not the long-term solution for Zano. Using ZBEC MasterCard is a temporary solution. Understand this, and I put the technocracy index earlier, but I used to have this thing that I used called the freedom index versus the tyranny index. The technocrats are moving towards a single digital currency backed by energy credits. They're not there yet. They're moving in stages. So it may be stable coins here, CBDCs here, digital IDs that are interoperable over here, but it isn't yet one single global system. That's what they're moving towards. We want to move towards a situation where everybody is using peer-to-peer digital cash directly without third parties. But we're not going to get there right away either. So using ZBEC is a good intermediate position. So as I've said myself, I try to do as many, and I'm going to be increasing this, direct transactions with crypto. I travel a lot to do talks and workshops. And so, with hotels and everything else, it's not as easy. It's easier for me to use crypto directly in New Hampshire. This is an intermediate step. But our goal, to be very clear, is to push people to be using Zano and Freedom Dollar and tokenized assets, BTCX, ETHX, or whatever, to be using those directly without third parties. But we've got to get going fast. We have to start building these parallel economies. People have to start earning in these currencies. This is why time is of the essence. And I'm hoping as you're seeing this, you're realizing the urgency that I've been trying to express to people is it's serious. Like, it's severe at this point. I mean, again, these 17 countries, I think I'm the most jarred by the Mexico thing, to be honest, because that would not have been, 2-3 years ago when I was writing my book. I would not have guessed that. I would have lost that prediction market bet. I would have lost a lot of these prediction market bets, to be honest. So every call will be linked to verified identity. Location tracking will be continuous and mandatory. Your contact network will be automatically mapped. Message content analyzed by AI. Complete social graph visible to authorities. And I will say, if you've used AI, I know it's, on the other end, it's convenient if you're trying to get access to information now. I can just search YouTube. I can use AI to search transcripts of YouTube clips and then automatically download them and cut the segments and everything else. It's great to be able to get access to information, but on the flip side, that means the government has access to this and then some, particularly based on implementing these digital ID things. So this is what we're talking about in Mexico. This is what we're talking about in 17 other countries. This is what we're talking about in the UK. But, I urge people to not think that the US is immune to this. The opposite is true. And if I've said this once, I've said it 1,000 times. Before we even talk about digital IDs, our money is already digital and it's already programmable. There are 13 programs used to track our money. Everything from NSA bulk data collection to the IRS using AI to integrate with your bank, which is part of the terms and services with everybody's bank account, to the Bank Secrecy Act and everything else. So if you think that you have zero financial privacy already, you have some degree of programmability with things like HSAs, food stamps are programmable money. I think that's one area where stable coins and where we're moving is going to increase in tyranny, but your money's already tracked. You have no freedom. You have suspicious activity reports where if you spend more than $10,000 in a transaction, it automatically files a report to the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department just issued a memo 3 or 4 months ago because the administration wanted to crack down on whatever, illegal immigrant, whatever the excuse was. And so for 30 zip codes in California and Texas, they lowered the threshold from $10,000 to $200. So now everybody doing a transaction more than $200 in those 30 zip codes, a report was immediately sent to the Treasury Department. What that means is that your money is already digital and there's already a reporting infrastructure set up for your bank to communicate that level of transaction information directly to the Treasury Department. It's already there. There's nothing more to be done. The thing is inherently already digital. So we don't have financial freedom. We have a completely surveilled system already. It's getting worse. And on the digital ID front, May the 7th came and went. Real ID is now mandatory for domestic flights. Now, you can still use a passport, by the way. So this is what I'm doing. But here's what they didn't tell you. It's already digital in 11 states, living in your iPhone and Android wallets. So this isn't coming, it's here. And it was almost 20 years in the making. It was hidden initially in a military spending bill in 2005. It was resisted by 24 states and then rammed through using COVID as a cover. So, and by the way, this is just standard par for the course. I hope by this point you realize that the Constitution's essentially been shredded. And in an emergency, it's never even considered. And can just consider in recent times. I mean, I know, the TARP bill, the financial bailout bill in 2008, the Patriot Act, the CARES Act. It's always the same. Remember when John McCain suspended his campaign and then tried to do these theatrics about how he wanted to save the world and we all needed to get together and so both parties immediately decided to violate our constitutional rights and bail out all the banks. And then they patted themselves on the back and talked about how patriotic it was and never reversed any of the things that they put in place. So that's how government works. And nothing's changed. If anything, that process has actually gotten worse. I would argue that we probably have the most corrupt system and probably the least intelligent and least informed people in Congress. I truly think that, if I watch C-SPAN anymore these days, it's like watching the Jerry Springer show. It's absolutely absurd what's going on. It's theatrics. Nobody, if you read the founders and their debates and the Federalist Papers and some of the early discussions back and forth, it's like a different planet, to be honest. So that's where we are on that. Hold on, give me 1 second here. Something just rebooted. So I was at the point here. So the real ID, so the rollout of this thing was hidden in a military tsunami aid bill in 2005. So remember, there's a gap here, 2001 to 2005. So they first hid Real ID in a military tsunami aid bill with no separate vote. The states were given zero input on the federal mandate. It was an unfunded mandate imposed on all 50 states, complete constitutional violation, completely ignored. And opposition was silenced through federal funding threats, which is often something that happens. And resistance was crushed. 24 states passed laws explicitly against it. This was a big thing here in New Hampshire with the Free State Project. We passed a law against it. Didn't matter. Montana and Missouri led an organized opposition, and the deadlines kept on getting pushed. 2008, 2011, 2013, 2020. I mean, it's been available for people to get. I always just said, I'm going to punt, and because I know they're just going to push the deadline again. Again, it took Trump winning to actually accelerate and get this thing over the finish line. So I hope people are understanding that the things that you didn't like when it was Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates, you're like either passive about or you're cheering on when it's Trump. And it was COVID that destroyed all of the remaining resistance. And what happened was the states capitulated one by one for federal funds. So I know there are a lot of people out there. We did our one podcast on why voting doesn't matter, but we're going to do a much more elaborate one. I mean, not only my experience, but what we've studied in other situations about how all of this works. And even those that are interested, I'm in New Hampshire. I'm excited about New Hampshire and the Free State Project. I still love, I think this is the place to be, but the people here have sold out on anything involving the federal government and large dollar amounts. So all of the wins that you see people celebrating are these little small wins at the state level, but they're getting crushed by the federal government. And then they just don't talk about it. So we had a law against Real ID. And then, apparently that obviously was steamrolled due to COVID. Well, do you ever see anybody posting about or lamenting or even talking about the fact that a thing that years ago was considered a big marketing event that people would use as a reason why people should move here? Oh, look, we stopped Real ID. No one even talks about what happens when these things get reversed. And they largely get reversed. So states capitulated. Then in 2021, the digital transformation began. Apple Wallet integrations began secretly. In 2022, Google Wallet followed. By 2024, 8 states were fully digital. No announcement. Did you hear about it? Love to see if you guys had heard that 8 states were fully digital. You have to dig to find this information. May 2025, enforcement begins nationwide. And now in 2025, 11 states digital, 20 more by year end. Again, we have these kiosks, 5,500 kiosks now throughout the United States for people to sign up for this digital ID. So the Department of Homeland Security just admitted on camera that starting May the 7th, you can't board a plane in your own country without their approved digital tracking ID. There's clips on this. Frankly, this would have turned into like a 3-hour podcast, so I had to shut it off with the clips. Although there were some clips that I was not able to download, which I will talk about in a minute, which furthers kind of the point that conversations about technocracy are highly being suppressed. Someone just asked, which are the 8 states? Well, let me get you the list. Right now, I was going to put that in a map, but Arizona, California, Colorado, Georgia, Hawaii, Iowa, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Mexico, and Ohio. So it's up to 11. And again, 20 more by the end of the year. So if you're sitting there saying, oh God, gee, I'm glad we don't have Keir Starmer, or do you realize these 11 states already have a digital ID and the whole thing's being rolled out? Like, we are actually not winning at all. We're leading in this. In the UK, the timeline is 2029. We're already 11 states in. So to be very clear, the United States sucks on this. We stuck on digital currency and all of it, free speech. We are not winners. We are not number one. And it's a race to the bottom globally. So it'll be continuous verification. Face ID equals government biometric check. Location will be tracked with every use. We know where this is going. And it's a collaboration. Apple and Google are now government partners. And we don't know what the data sharing agreements are. And now we have Palantir layered in on top of this. So what do you think is going to happen? Everybody's required to have a real ID. It's digital and will be digital by the end of this year in more than half of the states. And by February of next year, probably almost all. Well, what do you think they're going to connect that to? What do you think Palantir is going to do with the database of Americans? Just sit on it? That will be tied into your digital ID. So again, what's actually happened here is significantly accelerated beyond anybody's imagination. I mean, were any of you thinking, well, if Kamala gets in, we're going to have $27 trillion worth of stable coins as backdoor CBDCs and, a digital ID in 30 states at the end of year one? I wasn't. And in fact, most people still don't even know this is happening. And again, it's not being discussed. It's being implemented. So we spend $1,000 to carry around our own ankle monitor. And I could do a whole separate episode on, I mean, when you look at the CARES Act and some of the stuff that went in there, we had to remember contact tracing. I mean, this was the whole idea of, well, we got to make sure that, you know, somebody who tests positive, we've got to know everyone that they've interacted with. Do you think they turned any of that contact tracing off? Remember all of the updates that you would get on your cell phone on a constant basis? I mean, you still get those things. Again, when surveillance is added in an emergency, it's never taken away. So we are living in an accumulation of emergency-inspired increases in the surveillance state, and nothing has slowed it down. And right now, nobody is even resisting it. So now we have Palantir. And Palantir was founded with CIA money, now valued at $450 billion. I actually didn't check as of today. That was when I did a podcast a few months ago. So I should probably look. It may be more, maybe less. $450 billion. It's literally named after the evil seeing stones from Lord of the Rings. They have now access to every government database in America. Their AI is building behavioral prediction models on every single citizen. Pre-crime is not science fiction. Minority Report is operational now, today in America. Now, here's the funny thing about this. I was looking to aggregate clips, and I don't even know if I'm going to play the clips that I have because they're not as great as I was hoping. But, you know, Edward Snowden has spoken out about Palantir. You now can't find that video clip. And there were, I searched and actually got a list of here are all of the YouTube clips about Palantir regarding this, regarding this, regarding this. Most of the videos have been taken down or can't be downloaded. So that was probably the biggest piece of news in even putting together this part of this, because I've seen these clips. I'm like, oh, I wonder if I can go back and find the clip of Alex Karp saying this, Peter Thiel saying this, Edward Snowden saying this. I can't find many of the clips. That should tell you what you need to know. When I say that the shadow banning is happening, excuse me, now on this topic, even though it's not happening on COVID, this is real. This is not fictitious. So it's built specifically for total information awareness. This is the vision of Palantir. The Gotham platform is already used by the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and the Department of Defense. It's also used by many other countries. I mean, it's being used in Gaza. It's being used in the Ukraine conflict. It's been used to suppress right-wing movements in Europe. Every federal database is accessible instantly. We will be looking at state DMVs connected through Real ID, financial records through those suspicious activity reports that I was talking about, and then moving forward, medical records will be accessible through HHS contracts. So Palantir is making a big expansion into the healthcare space. And on the October the 22nd, the Technocracy Roundtable, I'm going to have a whole bunch of information. Not just me, all four of us are going to have a wealth of information. That is one you're definitely going to want to check out, because we're spending a lot of time trying to understand fully what's already happened with respect to the integration of AI in the healthcare system. And I think you're going to be disappointed by what's going on. They're building AI prediction engines, behavior models built on everyone, pre-crime algorithms, social network analysis, automated, risk scores generated and updated, future actions predicted with increasing accuracy. In fact, and it's not just Palantir that's doing this. Increasingly, I mean, Oracle and Larry Ellison have been doing this forever. Oracle's first client was the CIA. Oracle powers the Federal Reserve. Larry Ellison is personal friends with Benjamin Netanyahu. He just bought, or whatever process they're in with TikTok. TikTok is now censoring a ton of content. His son, I believe, now runs Paramount. They have, it looks like a controlling stake in terms of the editorial content at CBS. And I played in the last episode of the episode before clips from Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison is a big believer in surveillance capital. He has stated explicitly and outright. Nobody's even hiding this. They're presenting this as a good idea. They are using the safety argument, and they don't see that there's anything even wrong with it. Now, we already have in the United States something called fusion centers. There are 79 fusion centers across America. Every database is connected, federal, state, and local, all integrated into one system. I believe there's a fusion center near where I used to live, and it's real-time surveillance, 24/7. Palantir's AI watching and analyzing everything. So we're not a citizen with rights anymore. We're just a data point being analyzed for threat potential. So you've got to look into these fusion centers, 79 of them. Every major city and region is covered, $400 million in annual funding guaranteed, 24/7 operations that never stop, zero oversight or accountability. So again, this already exists. I think that, this is why I want to do things like the technocracy scorecard and the monarchy scorecard and everything else, because what I found when I first started trying to warn people about CBDCs is it was my education in studying how the existing financial system works, that we already have all of this. So we're sitting here thinking we're worried about something in the future, not realizing what is already in the present. Adding some of this technical layer on top is just icing on the cake. They've already put in place the infrastructure, and largely a lot of this has been subverted legally through contracts that we've consented to through corporations. So the database integration, criminal records to the NCIC system, financial data from Treasury and IRS, medical records from HHS and the CDC, educational records from the Department of Education, travel records from the DHS and TSA, and communications data from the NSA. So you add on top of that license plate readers tracking all movement, facial recognition from street cameras, cell phone tower data triangulation. Financial transaction monitoring is essentially instant. Social media scanning is automated. We're talking about a digital dossier on all of us. And again, Trump pushed this. And where was the outrage? Oh, it's great. I've seen people say that, oh, well, at least it's not Bill Gates. I mean, this is just beyond baffling to me that people have already gotten themselves into a place where, well, I guess technocracy is going to win, but at least it's the good guy. It's the white hat technocrat, which I will do. It's not going to be anytime soon, but a whole deep dive on Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is not a white hat. Again, there are no white hats. None of these people are white hats, but Peter Thiel is not any morally superior to Bill Gates, and it's the same outcome. Except the difference is there's no friction, and Thiel has been able to move his way in, whereas at least people resist Bill Gates. So every piece of your digital existence is cataloged, and so let's look at what is in your file. Facial recognition from DMV, fingerprints from background checks, iris scans from Clear and TSA PreCheck, voice prints from customer service calls, gait analysis from security cameras everywhere. Every website visited, tracked, and stored, every purchase made, recorded, every place traveled, logged permanently, every person contacted, mapped in a network, every word typed, analyzed by AI. Again, this is a move towards predictive modeling where future crimes are predicted before they're committed. Palantir has been working with local law enforcement on this exact thing, on pre-crime, on this kind of behavioral analysis. Health issues forecasted in advance for insurance, which we'll talk about when we talk about AI and healthcare. Political actions anticipated and prevented. One of the things that came out of the Charlie Kirk thing, and I haven't followed up to see what happened to this, but Trump was looking for money for requiring drones for political events with AI analysis. Every single one of these events is used to just augment the data collected into this system and infrastructure that's already been built through fusion centers, Palantir, and so forth. So all kinds of control mechanisms here. There's already instant bank account freezing capabilities. And as you can see, moving forward with all of this, travel restrictions will be applied instantly. Communication can be cut off with the click of a button. So this is where we are. So I hope people, I'm not entirely sure even what to do with this. because this has been the way, it's been this way for a long time, and people aren't aware of it. I mean, we really are at the late stages of this, and that's what I have sensed even more, I guess, profoundly the last couple of months, is exactly how close they are. I mean, I even thought 2030 was seemed like it was coming up soon, right? Seemed like an aggressive timetable, but then now you look into what's going on right now and it's actually happening faster than that. And I think a lot of people have thought, well, we have time to do what? You think you're going to stop it at the election, at the polling place? People have thought that there is no reversion back to what we had before. What we had before was probably a fantasy in our own lifetime anyway. There's no going back to the Constitution. There's no fixing $37 trillion worth of debt. Even the Federal Reserve, when it was formed, it was kind of understood that this was going to be temporary, that this wasn't going to be a sustainable model. Well, what was it an interim model for? It was always a platform towards globalization. And then, subsequently added on top of that, technocracy. So the technocracy movement started in the 30s, but then in the 60s, the Rockefeller Foundation started funding population control programs worldwide. David Rockefeller personally mentored Henry Kissinger, and Kissinger wrote NSSM 200 in 1974, stating that population control requires identification and tracking of all humans. So I wanted to provide a little history into where all of this came from. And then Kissinger mentored Klaus Schwab, who founded the World Economic Forum in 1971. So the bloodline of control runs through specific families and their proteges. The population control origins, again, began with the Rockefeller Foundation funding eugenics programs, which were then rebranded as family planning for public acceptance. And the big push has always been global population seen as a threat to elite resources. This has been the entire Malthusian approach and fear that has been used for all of this. Even the whole climate change thing was manufactured by the Club of Rome, which they even admit in their own documents, I believe also in the 1960s, because people wouldn't accept what's happening. They wouldn't accept carbon systems or they wouldn't accept any of this unless there was some perceived threat. And so they figured, well, if we can manufacture an existential threat to humanity, then we can get people to buy into this. But it is completely manufactured scarcity and manufactured climate alarmism, in their own words, by the Club of Rome, which maybe I'll do a separate thing on the Club of Rome at some point, or we can talk about it with Courtney or another guest. So this blueprint that ultimately ended up leaking was from a Kissinger classified memo, which stated in 1974 that population control is a U.S. national security priority. And the third world was targeted for testing first. Now it's being applied globally to everyone. And this Rockefeller blueprint was modernized and perfected by Bill Gates. So Bill Gates, obviously Microsoft built the digital infrastructure, and then there's something called ID 2020 Alliance, created the implementation framework. Gavi pushed it through vaccine certificates, and then patent 060606, I'm not kidding, that's the actual patent number, tracks body activity for cryptocurrency rewards. So this isn't philanthropy. This is the business of human livestock management. So this ID 2020 architecture was founded in 2016 at the UN headquarters in New York. The partners were Microsoft, Accenture, and the Rockefeller Foundation. Remember, Accenture is one of the 3 vendors involved in the rollout of the digital ID program in 17 countries. The goal was digital identity for all by 2030. And vaccines were explicitly chosen as the delivery mechanism. And COVID provided a perfect implementation opportunity. So again, there's a whole patent portfolio around this, including a body activity cryptocurrency system, biometric payment systems that are patented globally, behavior monitoring technology, digital certificate infrastructure. All patents are assigned to Microsoft technology. $200 million has gone to digital ID projects directly. You have projects like Path, Village Reach, and others all funded. African and Asian countries are specifically targeted, and media organizations are funded for positive coverage, and academic institutions are captured through grants. And I think people are starting to realize this and know this more, but again, there's no mystery behind this. This is, you can follow the money flows, and you can follow all of this back to Rockefeller, Kissinger, memo, these organizations, this funding. I mean, obviously this stuff didn't just crop up overnight. They didn't just announce something and coordinate its implementation in 17 countries overnight. This has been in the planning phase for quite some time. So now we have, the central banker's role in all of this. So the Bank for International Settlements chief Agustín Carstens said on camera, with CBDCs, we will have absolute control over the rules and regulations that determine the use of money. And we have the technology to enforce that. I've played some of these clips in the past. They're not hiding it at all. They're bragging about it. Carstens has said that, this is about being able to monitor and block financial transactions. And the Bank of International Settlements, if you're not familiar with them, they're the central bank to the central bank. They coordinate all central banks. And so every central bank is synchronized on a timeline. So the CBDC standards will be, established and mandatory. And there's a big 2026 launch timeline that's set in stone. And we have, in addition to whatever the BIS is doing, Lagarde has said that we may have a digital euro as soon as this month, actually. So they're moving forward very aggressively. The U.S. had already implemented FedNow. And again, Trump stating that, signing an executive order saying that we have no CBDC doesn't preclude integrating with any of these systems. And of course, we've just captured stablecoins and added tracking and programmability to this. So, again, if you've been following me, I think you know what the features are of CBDCs, but they're the same features that can apply to government regulated stablecoins or the existing financial system that we already have, which is digital. Expiration dates on your money, geographic spending limits, category restrictions for carbon and health. Again, we have that. That's what, not being able to use food stamps to buy soda, HSAs, all of these things. I've talked about the card in Sweden that is already used, the MasterCard, the economy MasterCard that automatically tracks your carbon and shuts off if you use too much carbon. Instant freezing, negative interest rates to force spending. All of those pieces and all the infrastructure and all the technology is already there. And we did talk about, I'll give you a little bit more detail about the three companies that are building every one of these digital ID systems, Accenture, Thales, and Idemia. BlackRock owns a controlling share in all three. So, this is kind of a new level of fascism. Now, remember, again, if you're celebrating that Klaus Schwab is no longer the chair of the WEF, Larry Fink is now the co-chair of the WEF. So Larry Fink, whose firm manages trillions of dollars of assets, that firm controls a majority interest and a controlling interest in all three of the contractors rolling out these digital IDs. Signature companies are everywhere without exception. This is not a competitive bidding situation. It's literally a cartel. So BlackRock owns controlling shares, and he was pushing ESG. So what was ESG about? ESG was about laying the framework for an energy credit-backed digital currency. And while ESG may have had a setback, there's no setback if the digital IDs are being rolled out and Larry Fink is now in charge of the WEF. They are bringing back they're just rebranding it. ESG didn't go away. It's just being rebranded, but now they have the technological infrastructure to be able to put it together. And between CBDCs, backdoor stablecoins, and digital IDs, that technocratic vision of a single global economy backed by energy credits, a single energy credit-based system, is much closer than it's ever been, and probably even than they imagined at this point. So essentially, it's a shadow government through corporate ownership. Corporate executives become government regulators. Government officials join companies that they regulate. Contracts are guaranteed through relationships. There's zero accountability in the system. The corruption is completely institutionalized. Again, I'm one of the biggest free market guys there is, and you know, I've said this before. I was radicalized 3 times, but the first time I was radicalized is when I dropped out of college when I was 19 and started my first company, and got to meet with VCs and Wall Street and realized it was a complete crony system. It had nothing to do with capitalism. I mean, I learned that in the mid 90s, and it's only gotten much, much worse. We do not have a capitalist system. We have not had a capitalist system since I've been working on startups. We've had a crony system that's now morphing into a technocracy. That is currently it. It would be inaccurate to claim that we have free market capitalism at this point in time. So again, it gets worse the more you dig into this. Tony Blair's institute advises 40 countries on implementing digital ID. World Economic Forum, young global leaders run governments worldwide, including, by the way, let's not forget Tulsi Gabbard. I know many people seem enamored of her. I have no idea why, looking at her background. She was literally in the military PSYOP division and was a WEF young leader. I mean, if you're actually buying that, after what we've seen with the warrantless wiretapping in Iran, I don't even know what to tell you at this point. The Bilderberg sets policy behind closed doors. Peter Thiel is a big player in that, as is Alex Karp from Palantir. The Trilateral Commission coordinates regionally. Democracy is just theater for the masses. These are your real rulers. And I wrote about this in my book, The Final Countdown. Patrick Wood, though, is absolutely the OG on this. He's been studying this for 45 years. When I was writing my book, trying to figure out who is behind CBDCs, who the organizations were behind the scenes, you know, obviously I ran into the Trilateral Commission, and they don't publish their membership, but it turns out he's been tracking it for 45 years. So I reached out to him. I said, hey, you know, can you send me a list? He actually sent me a whole PDF of all 400 and whatever it is, 18 current members of the Trilateral Commission. Guy's literally been documenting this forever with a complete database. So a lot of times people say, well, who are they? Well, you can actually figure out who they are by tracking who they are, tracking the participants in these organizations and looking at how they're all interlinked, which is, I'm working on a database to do just that, kind of our own open source version of Palantir. So here's the Blair blueprint that the Tony Blair Institute has deployed globally. 40 countries are receiving implementation, quote, advice. It's the same digital ID template pushed everywhere, and it's funded by dark money billionaires. It's teaching governments how to bypass democracy. That's what the Tony Blair Institute is doing. That's why what's going on in the UK right now is going on in the way that it's going on. They want something, a template that they can roll out. You have the WEF involved. You have young global leaders. You have Trudeau, who's not a player anymore, but even worse is the person that they have in there right now is even more of a staunch proponent of CBDCs and digital IDs. Cabinet positions are captured globally. This is actually part of what not only the WEF does, but part of what the Trilateral Commission does. They infiltrate people at the cabinet level. For instance, all but one member of Jimmy Carter's cabinet were members of the Trilateral Commission. Every president since has had multiple members of their cabinet tied to the Trilateral Commission, and usually the Commerce Secretary is tied to the Trilateral Commission. Why? Because the Trilateral Commission is pushing globalism and technocracy, and trade, which is a function of the Commerce Department, is a great vehicle for doing that. So the Trilateral Commission works in North America, Europe, and Asia, you know, predominantly Japan. And so you basically have the these organizations like the Trilateral Commission, they're coordinating by controlling who's advising the people that are in political control of these countries globally. And they've been pushing this agenda for 50 years. Bilderberg Group has their annual policy setting in secret. You have the Council on Foreign Relations, which is another big one, focusing on U.S. policy control. And there are a lot of people in the media that are members of the Council on Foreign Relations. Once you start documenting all of this, you realize how completely programmed and controlled these institutions are and how captured they are by a relatively small group of groups. They're all interconnected, they're all unelected, and they often will be on multiple boards, or they'll serve, a 3-year term over here and then jump over there. Jamie Dimon was on the Trilateral Commission board. Now he's not. Larry Fink is, but then they switch and they go, hop. And at one point in time, I think Kissinger was on multiple boards. At one point, I think I was trying to research who was on the board of the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the WEF, and the Club of Rome, who had more overlap. And I think it was actually, there was somebody from the Carnegie Foundation that was on 3 or 4 out of 4 of the boards. Somebody I'd never heard of before too, which kind of tells you, there really are people operating behind the scenes that no one knows who they are. So here's the timeline. So we're now in a cascade. Real ID went mandatory in May. EU digital wallet launches next month. 30 more countries activate by December. Bank integration completes, or, in some degree by January. CBDCs will launch in 2026, if not earlier. I mean, again, I've got to see what the current status is with the EU. But at this point, we have months, not years, before the prison doors lock permanently. So this is the timetable. The timetable is not 2030. It's Q3 2025 acceleration, Q4 2025 integration of banking with digital ID, healthcare and ID, education systems and ID, and then Q1 2026 is activation. So by 2030, the transformation will be total and irreversible. Because again, at the rate at which this is going, 2030 is not, I think there's kind of this thought that 2030 is where things are supposed to begin. And that's really not. It's when things are supposed to have been implemented. Well, they're not implemented all at once. There's phased implementation. So we're actually nearing the late stage of rollout, as opposed to, I think people might be thinking 2030 is when it starts. So the UN Agenda 2030, World Economic Forum, Great Reset, every human being tracked from birth to death, every transaction monitored and controlled. We're on par with that. I mean, this is going on right now. We're looking at, the infrastructure to do this. What do we need? We need 8 billion humans digitally identified, no offline existence possible, AI managing all permissions automatically, predictive behavioral control active, and escape routes eliminated permanently. So you have to understand, this is something that a lot of people have this view of, well, I'm going to go hide in the woods, or I'm going to have an intentional community and we're going to hide from this. It's not how it works. This is not how it's designed. It is designed to be a complete and total control system. It doesn't operate cooperatively with other systems. When you read UN Agenda 2030 and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, it encompasses regulating everything: the land, the air, the sea, all aspects of it. So there is no hiding in the woods. This is something that needs to be, we're going to have to actively defeat it. And the way to defeat it isn't to fight it, it's to exit the system and pull energy out of the system as quickly as possible. But I think at this point, I'm even, I'm not saying I'm getting demoralized, but I think if you're not getting the sense of we're almost at the end, not at the beginning. I'm trying to get people to, I don't want to use the word fight, but I'm trying to get people to exit. And I think people think that they have more time. They don't realize exactly how close we are to being completely trapped. The ability to do, look at what's going on even with AI. And again, I like AI. I'm not anti-technology. I'm not anti-digital currencies. It's, again, the freedom or the tyranny side of it. But look at all of the deals that have happened I mean, I just saw OpenAI cut a big deal with AMD today. What is the big race? The big race that they're trying to say in this America versus China manufactured thing is it's the race to AGI. Well, what is the race to AGI? AGI is artificial general intelligence. The idea is it's a race to see who's going to fund the AI that is going to be the control system for the rest of humanity. This is what they're actively pushing for. Trump's not fighting against AGI. Trump's not fighting for individual rights. Trump's not fighting for constitutional rights at all. One of the first announcements that he made was Operation Stargate with Larry Ellison and Sam Altman from OpenAI, which is a AI healthcare infrastructure play. Again, watch the thing on October the 22nd. It's going to be a good one. So, I mean, at this point, with the digital ID and a CBDC or backdoor stablecoin, because again, it's not, all they have to do is say you will have to use your digital ID, real ID with your stablecoin. Done. And if you're going to be a stablecoin issuer, you have to issue it on a platform that works with the standards of real ID, which is tied into the Palantir database. This isn't even hard, right? This is default. This is what is happening. So we have to actually stop this. We have to actively stop it. It is the default situation. So again, resistance failed. The UK ignored 2.8 million signatures. The Swiss, 50.4% voted for a digital ID. Voluntary, but we all know there is no such thing as a voluntary or temporary surveillance program. We saw what happened to the Canadian truckers. Their protests did nothing. Democracy is dead, and the courts absolutely will not help. I don't know how many friends I have to have in prison or facing prison sentences to try to convince you of that, or my own. By the way, on that, I had a legal case that went on for 5.5 years. I ultimately went to the state Supreme Court here in New Hampshire because the case against me was dismissed. And we went to the state Supreme Court, and 3 of the 5 judges were appointed by my political opponent. And they were actually like smiling and giggling when they said, well, you know, we're reversing this. We're throwing out the dismissal. I guess Aaron gets to have his day in court. They literally joked about this, about, dragging me through this law firm. Well, one of those judges today just, I guess, is announced is doing a plea deal because she was involved in all kinds of corruption. I'm not saying that's a single data point about the court system. The court system is inherently broken because when we are talking about digital IDs and we are talking about digital money, all they have to do is invoke national security. The Constitution immediately is thrown out for national security. I know you might think otherwise, but I don't know how many examples we have to show that that's the case. We have no constitutional rights in an emergency. You're not going to win in court against real ID, or against stablecoins, or against CBDCs. You have to ditch the dollar. You have to move into parallel systems, and we have to do it now. So the democratic failures, petitions are ignored in every country. There's almost nothing, petitions sometimes can have effect, but they don't anymore. They're ignored by the politicians. The votes are bypassed or completely manipulated. Even in the case of the UK, Parliament rejected. Didn't matter. Wasn't going to stop, the equivalent of an executive order in that country. Protest futility. Again, truckers' accounts frozen instantly. If you're in the system, they control you through the money. If you stop using their money, that's why this was the first thing that I did was exited that system. You can't debank somebody that isn't using a bank. And then you start forming trade networks and you begin trading things outside of the system using technology that can't be tracked. That gives you a leg up. What else do we have to work on? We have to work on alternative networks and systems for health and food. But if you think protesting is going to help, if you think local government is going to help, this is the thing as well. And I know some people push back on this. Why Did the states that pushed back on Real ID cave? Federal funding in an emergency. And I guarantee you, your state sucks, no matter how good you think your state is. I moved to New Hampshire because I thought it was the best state and the most libertarian state. And by the way, by all measures, it is. And we caved and no one talks about it. So in the end, will they cave? They've already caved once on Real ID. I know somebody's putting in a bill to state that we won't, we won't have maybe a digital version of it. They'll cave in an emergency when they need funding. Why? Because over 30% of our budget is now tied to the federal government, which has increased massively since I moved here. Nobody wants to talk about that. Your state government is not going to help you. And chances are your local government has dependencies on the state. So you may have some fluke one-off situation, but 99.9% of you are not going to be in a position where the politics matter. Because when national security is involved, they will just trample all over you. So there's the good news. But their system requires mass participation to work. It needs constant internet, reliable power, depends on voluntary compliance. It can't stop peer-to-peer transactions. It can't control what it can't see. These aren't minor issues. They're fatal vulnerabilities if we move quickly enough, and that is our opportunity. And again, people might say, well, what about this? What about this? I'm not saying the odds here are great. I'm actually, if anything, I hope you listen to this and say, oh my God, we're in trouble. We're in deep shit. Yes, because we are in the late stages of this. We need to optimize our probability of success, but there's certainly no guarantee of success. But if we do nothing, it's guaranteed failure. So their infrastructure is, completely dependent on technology, electricity. It assumes voluntary compliance. It's vulnerable to mass non-participation. Again, protesting and voting doesn't matter. But if you're able to actually engage in economic activity and use systems outside of theirs, that is more problematic. So there are certain surveillance limits, but even these are risks. So they can't break proper encryption yet. Quantum computing could change that. They can't stop peer-to-peer networks. They can't monitor physical meetings, although, increasingly with drones and everything else. I think one of the things that was announced, OpenAI is working on some new surveillance device that doesn't have a screen. I guess they brought in the Apple designer to work on this. I haven't fully looked into this. They can't read minds or predict everything, at least yet. And they can't force actual productivity. So there are some economic vulnerabilities. It requires a productive population to function. Although I will say AI and robotics might is changing that. But they can't stop all barter and trade. They can't control all resources. They can't prevent parallel systems, and they can't survive mass opt-out. This is why this is the strategy. This is why I'm probably moving towards, maybe the theme and format will be, which I'm sure I'll change it, but one day it's talking about the technocratic threat, like we're talking today about digital IDs, and then on Thursday it'll be talk about what's the counter to that threat. How can we stop it? What technologies can we use today, right now? That might be a good format. And it is tough. I will tell you, it's tiring. I'm tired. I'm working on getting 5 of these websites launched to help in a whole variety of these areas, because I hope you're starting to see a lot of people have to start participating in this. We need to start building parallel economies. Are not going to be, 1 or 2 people. This is something that we've got to figure out how to. We don't have to scale it right away, but we've got to get it operational. We have to work out the kinks. Building parallel systems is not easy, but it is possible. So Zano offers completely invisible transactions and anonymous aliases instead of government names. There's no KYC whatsoever. There's no surveillance even possible. As an example, you can pair Zano and your alias with something like Matrix, and now you have encrypted communication. And I will do I don't know if it's a full show. I may couple it with something else, but walk through how you can set up your Zano wallet, get an alias, and start using these systems. But A Zano alias is the opposite of a digital ID, right? A digital ID is something that is centrally issued, it's tracked, linked to everything else, controlled by third parties. A Zano alias is something that is private and completely voluntary and can't be tracked individually. And you can have multiple aliases. So I bring this example up today just to say that there is a way for people to be able to, engage in commerce and have an identity, and that identity can even be tied to reputation management systems, but that's private and that you own that identity, because you don't own your digital ID. You rent your digital ID. So Zano privacy features are complete transaction privacy by default. The alias system, there's no blockchain analysis possible. It's completely untraceable by design. It's peer-to-peer. And, some of the integration is Zano plus Matrix for private communication, Zano plus Freedom Dollar, which gives you a privacy stablecoin. Again, on Thursday, I'm going to talk about this. This is the answer to stablecoins and CBDCs. And there are many other things, and I encourage you to check out episode 25 that you can already do today on the Zano ecosystem. No corporate intermediaries needed. It's a complete parallel system. In fact, my wife and I are working on a global medical tourism marketplace, an ability for people to find medical services outside of the system, which may sound bizarre, but what you'll realize is that you can actually save 90 to 95% on healthcare costs by going outside of the system, going outside of the country. So there's huge adoption that's happened just over the last 6 months, frankly, and merchant integration expanding. So I'm going to go through again. I'll do a whole separate thing on that. There's also the website freedomforge.io, which lists current projects that, they're little walkthrough guides on how you can download a wallet. And then as new solutions enter the marketplace, there are more guides and videos, but it's also a place, hopefully, for entrepreneurs who want to build projects on Zano to meet up and share different ideas. And the way that I've structured the website is that it's, it lists what is the technocratic threat, and then how do we counter it. You can build anything on Zano. You could build a prediction market. There's a lottery. There are a whole variety of different things that can be built. I don't want you to think it's limited to that, but I believe we have to focus on, first and foremost, counters to these technocratic threats, because if we don't have solutions for money, for food, and for healthcare, then we're going to have a really hard time defeating technocracy. So that's why that's my personal interest, but that doesn't have to be yours. People will do whatever they want on this platform. The platform is very robust in that regard. So I guess, in conclusion, I want to be clear about what I've shown you. I'm beyond the warning phase. There is no warning phase. We're not talking about theories. We're not speculating anymore. This is documentation of a global surveillance and control system that went fully operational while we've been distracted by whatever it is. Culture wars, right versus left, America versus China, whatever it is, we've been distracted by it. 17 countries in 90 days proves coordination. Real ID went live on May the 7th. 11 states have digital licenses and phones right now. Palantir is building behavioral models on every American. 3 billion humans have already been tagged like livestock. They started this 60 years ago with Rockefeller's population control programs. Kissinger wrote the blueprint. Gates built the infrastructure. Schwab coordinated the governments. And I'd argue that, Thiel and Musk and Karp and David Sachs and others are maybe the ones that push this thing over the top. Central bankers created the economic cage, and big tech handed them the keys to our digital life. We saw the UK ignore millions of signatures. You saw parliaments bypassed. You saw democracy revealed as pure theater. The old forms of resistance have failed because the system no longer requires you to consent. It only requires your participation. What they didn't calculate is human beings' fundamental drive for freedom. Every empire in history fell when people created parallel systems. Rome didn't fall to barbarians. It fell when people stopped using Roman currency. The Soviet Union didn't collapse from war. It collapsed when people built black markets. You have a choice to make, and you now have 90 days to make it. submit to digital slavery, where every transaction is monitored, every movement tracked, every word recorded, every thought analyzed, where your ability to buy food depends on your social credit score, where wrongthink means economic death, where your children inherit digital chains, or you can start to build a parallel economy. Zano makes you invisible. Your transactions can't be tracked. Your wealth can't be frozen. Your identity remains yours. Matrix keeps your communications private. Freedom Dollar, which I'll reveal next episode, gives you stable purchasing power outside of their system. It's not about technology. It's about the survival of human freedom. It is about free will itself. Again, it's freedom versus technocracy. Free will is at stake. And I would argue tokenization is the battleground. They want you to believe resistance is futile. They want you to believe the digital prison is inevitable. They want you to comply because everyone else is. But 3 billion people in chains doesn't make slavery right. A unanimous vote doesn't make tyranny legitimate, and their sophisticated technology doesn't make their system invincible. The parallel economy isn't coming, it's here. The tools exist, the networks are forming, but the choice is yours. And the timing is frankly running out. So the counter economy starts now, and the resistance here is going to be economic. Again, it's not going to be through polling. It's not going to be through petitions. It will be economic, or counter economic rather. So next episode will be Freedom Dollar. And I look forward to any comments or questions you might have. And look at that. We only have 1,000 people. I'm actually shocked by this because this is, I'd say we normally get 3,000. I mean, that's kind of a normal level. So to get 1,000, and I actually marketed this one, and I would think that this would be a particularly popular topic given what's going on in the news. So, so I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know if this is shadow banned. I have no idea. I have no idea what's happening. But I encourage you to like and share this. I think there's good and important information here. I did want to provide an overview of not only what's going on right now, but the history of all of it to put it in context and hopefully to provide a little bit of urgency in what's going on. I hope you share this with friends and family or anyone that you think might be interested in this. But I think we're sleepwalking our way into this right now. And, again, the tools exist, but we've absolutely got to use them, and we have to use them right now, not 90 days from now, 180 days from now. Sylvia says, thank you so much. I really appreciate all your work. I'm also freaked out about Mexico. Yeah, no, I mean, that one was shocking. All of it was shocking. But again, I hear a lot of, we defeated the globalists, and I don't understand what the basis for that is. How are the globalists defeated when digital ID was put into law in 17 countries? How are the globalists defeated when the UK decided to bypass the will of the people and parliament? In what way and on what planet have the globalists not only been defeated, but I don't think there's any way to look at this other than there's been acceleration. And the friction has actually dissipated. I think globalists are moving at a significantly faster pace. And I'd like to hear the argument. I'd like to hear the counter argument. Just like last week, I said some pretty provocative things about Maha, and I was expecting more of a response. I was expecting more people to try to defend their position. They're passionate about it. I mean, when you look at the information, when you look at the infiltration of the administration by AI for healthcare infrastructure, for wearables, I don't know how you look at that and equate that with medical freedom, which is inherently what the movement was supposed to be about. So anyway, I hope this information gets out to people. If you want to join the Q&A, I put it in a link. Hopefully we'll get some people on. I think in moving forward, I'm going to start scheduling these out a little bit more. At least we know that on Thursday, we're going to be talking about Freedom Dollar. On Monday, looks like we're going to have Courtney Turner on to talk about Curtis Yarvin again and Nick Land. That's going to be a fascinating one. Again, we need to hammer home everything that we can about Yarvin and everything about, I think what would be a good way to describe it is the right-hand path of technocracy, which is the path that the U.S. is going down. There is a right-hand path and a left-hand path. It all ends up in the same place, but there's different tactics, different propaganda. I think I look at Yuval Harari as being on the left, Curtis Yarvin being on the right, same endpoint. The endpoint is technocracy. The endpoint is humans are a problem to be solved. The endpoint is determinism, materialism. That is the endpoint both ways. It's just different marketing language to get people on board. So anyway, I'll keep talking for a little while here. I actually didn't get time to send these links out. Usually I have some time to send these chat stream links. But happy to take any questions on this topic or any other topic related to, the variety of things I talk about, technocracy or whatever. Also love to get your feedback on music. I've been making a lot of additional music lately, typically 1 or 2 per song. I'm going to try to get those out on the website soon. Oh, I was going to say this. So I'm updating the site to include more content. So if you go to the aarondayshow.com, let me pop that up here. Let's see. Let me see. See if I'm in the right place. Oh, it's not the right. Hold on. So for each of these episodes, in addition to the video and the transcript, I'm also sharing additional content. So moving forward, the songs that are created for each episode will be put up there. And then I'm also creating memes for each episode. And I'm also putting the visuals for the slides up as well. So if you want to share any of those, I know that, this information is somewhat difficult to follow. I mean, there's a lot usually when I'm going through this. And some of these concepts the basic concepts aren't hard to get, but understanding the relationships and the history behind it. So, obviously memes are very powerful. So now I'm going to show you, for instance, for this episode, and this episode only, I don't have memes for the other ones up yet, or I don't even necessarily have them created, but you'll see that for this episode, you can see all of the memes that I've put together. I think there are 20 or something, 24 different memes here that are easy to share. So the songs, which, I think some of them are catchy memes, and then, in the future, additional videos and video clips I'll put up here. And, again, the point is use them as you see fit, download them, share them. The whole point of all of this is just to get the information out. But, I'll go through some of these memes because we're waiting to see if anyone wants to join the live chat. We stop back in here. All right. So, so you can see a wide variety going into each of these topics. This meme is 90 days, 17 countries. You missed it while you slept. Mexico made it illegal not to track you. Democracy dead. So I'm trying to hit all of the high points here that relate to each of the slides. And I think some of these are some compelling images, and in the slides as well. You're happy to feel free to use however you see fit. Sylvia says totally left medical system. That's great. That I congratulations on that. That is one of the most. It's tricky, by the way. One of the problems is that most of the prescription medication that people on, they don't need. And some of it you can't just cut off. You have to taper off. And so this is actually a stranglehold that they have. So trying to position yourself to exit the healthcare system is one of the biggest things that you can do. I would say the money first, and then healthcare and food are close. So, I mean, we need to create marketplaces for farmers to be able to connect, for people to be able to source food, which, by the way, we should be doing anyway. I mean, our healthcare system in the US is not helping people improve their health. At best, it manages symptoms. At best. I mean, at worst, it's kind of a depopulation program. So, as I said, this is why with medical tourism, you'll learn that through market forces and through travel, you can actually find much better alternatives at a cheaper price. And we need to do the same thing with food. Our food has become poison. I think some of the worst shopping experiences now, it just occurred to me when I had to go into CVS a while back. It was a few months ago. And the whole front of the store is they're selling sugary drinks, they're selling energy drinks, they're selling candy, they're selling chips. And then the back of it is the pharmacy. And there's literally nothing health promoting. It's almost a cycle. If you buy the stuff at the front of the store, you're going to need the stuff in the back of the store. And our grocery stores have become very much like this. There are people that don't understand cronyism that will talk about how great the capitalist system is because of all the choices that we have in the supermarket. We actually don't have that many choices. Like, for instance, you'll have cereal where it's like 2 or 3 aisles of cereal, and it's just different branding, literally, of the same cereal. It's different boxes. Your choices are about which pattern of box you're buying processed food and sugar in. And so, it's not, there's not actually a big sacrifice by trying to move away from these other solutions, big box retailers, large grocery stores. It's actually helpful to move away. I'm going to go back up and look for, I guess there are quite a few questions here. Aaron, do you envision, okay, we already did that one, private chat. Florida's had Real ID since 2011. Yep. Couldn't Windows not allow Zano? Well, you certainly have issues. You could have a situation where the App Store could not allow certain things. This is why I moved to things outside of the App Store. This is why with the websites and the different things I'm building, I'm not going to make App Store versions of them available. It's just a non-starter trying to work within that framework. But certainly Windows could be a censorship mechanism. And this is why moving towards, I mean, in the long run, we want to move towards de-Googled phones and different operating systems. I mean, I myself have one foot in one area and one in the other, because if you're trying to educate people on what's going on, they're not obviously already on the alternative system. So it's kind of a dual thing. Otherwise, you're going to be in a complete echo chamber. John McAfee says, why shilling Zano? We have Monero. This is a classic misunderstanding. Monero is an alternative for money, but money represents 5% of global assets. Stocks, bonds, commodities, your house, everything else represents 95% of the assets of the world. Zano allows you to tokenize those assets and trade them with Monero level security. So Monero does not solve the Clarity Act. Monero does not solve many of the problems that we're up against when we're fighting technocracy. I like Monero. I use Monero. And Zano is the lead developer, and the guy who created Zano created the technology behind Monero. So I'm all a big fan of Monero, but Monero is not a singular solution to technocracy. So that is why I prefer both. And I'm not a maximalist. I'm building on Zano because again, it's the best platform that I've found for fighting technocratic threats. And because I've met the team, I've kicked the tires, and I've spent a lot of time in crypto, I guess 12 years now, however long, 13 years. And I think the team is a big part of it, but I support other projects and I'm not a maximalist at all. Hey, Deadheaded, how are you?
There we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Been listening to the podcast for the past couple hours. Did you say 90 days? Are you really looking at that short of a window at this point?
Well, I mean, I look at what's going on, and I think 90 days to begin exiting. I mean, to actually, you don't have to be fully on board in a parallel system, but you've got to be using parallel systems. You can't wait, right? You've got to get your toe in the water. Because if you look at the timetable, yeah, I mean, the timetable's compressed.
Absolutely.
And I never would have, I actually didn't think it either. Right. And you normally have people like, oh my God, you're calling this out, the sky's falling. And it's like, yeah, no, this is worse. And
yeah, no, I'm right there with you with what's coming down. I mean, I follow a lot of the same people, including read your book, and Catherine Austin Fitz, and a couple other people. So, but I was completely blindsided when you mentioned 17 countries had already done this quick.
Yeah, I was blindsided. I didn't know this 60 days ago. 30. I've only learned about this in the last few weeks, and then started studying it. And I don't even know if I would have paid attention to the 17 countries if the UK thing didn't happen. It was really the UK thing that brought the news story forward on the other 17 countries. And I didn't know the details on what was going on in Mexico. And so, yeah, it's insane. But part of the reason is I've been focused on what's going on in the US, which is also bad, right? I mean, I've been talking for months about Real ID. It isn't certainly the first time I've talked about that. The Real ID is bad. And when you couple Real ID with what they're doing with Palantir, people should be concerned here. You don't even have to be concerned about those 17 countries. Even if that stuff wasn't going on, there's cause for concern in the United States. The fact that that is going on, it also says to me that like, if it's going on that quickly in that compressed of a time frame, something's coming.
Yeah, obviously the way everything's compressing and all the misdirections. I mean, look how much time we spent talking about Charlie Kirk while they're sitting there making votes in the Senate and House that are detrimental to our lives. Who's doing a self-sovereign identity that's not government controlled? Really, that's where the next step.
Well, again, I mean, you can begin to do that with aliases on Zano. This is part of why. So there are issues with all of this. This is why I started on the aarondayshow.com website. I have a principles tab, because what I realized in all of this is that, look, we don't have, well, one, we shouldn't be trying to find a single solution to anything. This is the problem, right? So the technocrats are trying to impose a single solution. So I think even the act of thinking that we're going to come up with a single solution is a bad starting point. However, we have to be pretty honest about the fact that we don't have any governance models that work very well in anything. They also haven't worked in crypto. What was supposed to be great about Bitcoin turned out to be able to be hijacked fairly easily. So as humans, we have not actually figured out governance very well. And for whatever reason, we always end up going back to this. Well, it's either going to be an oligarchy or a monarchy or a democracy. Well, I mean, okay, if we know all of these things have not worked and we know why they haven't worked, maybe can we explore beyond that? Can we start talking about first principles? Can we maybe consider experimentation in some other areas? To me, that seems like a logical thing to do. I'm not saying everybody's going to be interested in this, but everybody should be interested in it, because these conversations apply not only to whether it's your current government or if you're starting a network state. Why are you starting a network state? And what are the first principles guiding the network state? And, don't repeat the same, there's no reason for you to start a network state that makes the same mistakes that we've known about historically, or even AI governance. And I didn't talk about that. I may do a separate thing on this, but there's a movement to make a kind of a global AI constitution. Well, I guarantee you, it's not even entirely clear that humans are going to be centric in that framework. And certainly any of the ideas that you and I might be interested in are not even at the table. So I think people need first principles thinking for their own lives. So I wanted to start that initiative as well and get that going, but by the way, but not saying that I have the answers, because I don't. I'm not actually trying to direct it to an outcome. What I'm saying is no one seems to be talking about these fundamental things. These technocrats don't believe in free will. I think most people do. And so if you realized that the influential players that are actually pushing this technocracy, these digital, IDs and digital money don't believe in free will, that might be problematic, or it should be problematic for most people. But the conversation doesn't even come up. We're not even having that conversation at all. We're completely removed from that level of conversation.
Well, I think was it Harriet Tubman said, I freed many slaves. I would have freed more if they only knew they were slaves.
Yeah.
And that's where we are. I mean, I just having a conversation with a CEO of companies who does major security work, and really doesn't understand the depth of the corruption that is happening at levels so deep that we don't, most people don't even understand. So,
well, and they're paid not to understand. It is tough. People don't want to believe this. This information is not easy to digest, not only because it's complicated and there are a lot of organizations and people involved, but also because inherently people don't want to know about this because it shatters people's conception of how institutions that they respect work.
It's more than just the institutions; it's their worldview, and yep. I think that's what a lot of the things we bump up against. I bump up against in the crypto world, in the development world, and all the time, people you think that are, fighting for freedom, go out and get a jab because some guy on TV told them it's the right thing to do. So yeah, I'm not black-pilled, but I understand we're still not reached the pinnacle of this yet. We're not near the backside of it.
No, but again, I guess the challenge, what I'm struggling with, and the podcast that I did, I don't know if you heard it last week, which I would have thought would have been more controversial, which is why I know it's got to be shadow banned, because they love rage bait, and it wasn't intended to be rage bait because most of my friends are, I consider myself in the medical freedom community, and the medical freedom community has been duped. The medical freedom community has been hijacked by big tech and AI. And what's going on right now is they're getting some relief on the issues that they've been concerned about in the past, but it's in exchange for something that's much worse. Because if your actual interest is in medical freedom, then what Larry Ellison and Sam Altman and what's going on with the application of AI within the healthcare system, and even what Trump's proposed, is antithetical to health freedom, period.
Oh, well, yeah, I can tell you a direct story. I have a client who's on United Healthcare. He had went into the hospital with severe, I forget what it was, stomach problems, to the point that they kept him in there for 3 days on intravenous IV and diagnosis and everything. Well, UHC is now using an AI claims analysis.
Yep.
And denied his claim, saying they don't cover stomach aches. And there's no human to go complain to. And this is the largest insurer in the country.
Yep. I was talking to, so Patrick Wood mentioned that on the last roundtable, which is why he suggested that we do this AI. He was talking about that as well. So once you dig into that, now let's be clear. It's not like the claims process isn't exactly ideal to begin with, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in some of these, I mean, United Healthcare's had a, reject first and then, fight it later. That whole industry has, but now you're right. The difference is there's no arbiter. The AI is the ultimate decision maker. It's a disaster.
And it doesn't have to be. Are you familiar with Gary Brecka?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the big thing is you understand this. He had 20 years of actuarial medical data on like 200 million people. And he could literally see the trends. Okay, you start, beta blockers on this date. 8 years from now, you're going to be on this. 12 years from now, you're going to be in full heart failure or whatever it is. And AI using that, that kind of data, I think could be very useful. But that's, of course, not what they're using it for.
No, of course it's not what they're using it for. So again, but you're right, they could. I mean, I use AI for my own personal health stuff, but not I wouldn't use it inside the system. I mean, it's a disaster if it's used inside the system. And so, yeah, we're going to go through that. I mean, at this point, you probably have more I'm going to do a whole market analysis of who all the players are and how all of it's interconnected. But, I'll tell you, I didn't realize how influential and detrimental Larry Ellison is.
Well, he's also, I know Peter Thiel and one of the other ones, but have you been looking at any of the breakthrough energy stuff, like the aneutronic fusion electrical generators? And
no, I need to, because actually energy is, yeah.
We've got, first off, the disclosures are coming out. We've had pure fusion, cold, normal room temperature, whatever you want to call it, fusion for decades, but it's been secret. But Helion Energy has got a contract with Microsoft to deliver a fusion electrical generator in 2028. And if you go to their website, it explains it all. And it's not a glorified way of boiling water either. They're pulling direct electricity off the magnetic field. And it's over unity. They say it's over unity 2 or 3. When in actuality, the over unity can be 10 or 20 times. And it's not really over unity, but you're pulling out more electricity than it costs to get it going. And this is coming out. And there's a couple other ones that are making that had been around for a while and have slowly been coming out. And they're not getting blocked. That's the the inventors aren't disappearing.
Yep.
So with what Helion Energy's got, and there's another company too that's using the aneutronic fusion. Because this tokamak stuff is all just smoke and mirrors. They'll never get the tokamak fusions working in an efficient manner. But what do they do now? If we've got cheap energy, nothing's free. They're going to have to gatekeep that as much as they gatekeep, financial system and eventually, of course, food. That's how I think they're going to attack the food system is through, you can't buy food unless you use digital dollars.
Oh yeah, that's obviously the case. So, and again, it's all tied in, and they're going to use energy. Energy is used as the new currency. It is by design, you move out of the price system and then they capture and control the energy credits and use that as the system of economics, which is tied to a social credit system. And again, this stuff is built. The Deconomy MasterCard, people should, I played this several times, people should be horrified about the fact that there's already, the rails have already been created. MasterCard already works with 150 major global partners and then some to track carbon and tie your financial transactions to it. So it's not like this is a pipe dream. It's something that's actually already working.
And we need more carbon. That's what people don't understand. We've already reached saturation heat levels for carbon. If we doubled the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, the effect on heat would be almost nothing. But it would, if we doubled the amount of carbon, plants would need 50% less water to grow.
Yep.
So, I mean, this whole carbon argument is it's nothing but evil. It's 100% evil.
It is, and it's intentionally manipulated and misleading by design from the Club of Rome. But I don't know what, again, as I was putting together this presentation, I'm kind of like, I didn't even know a lot of this until I started putting together the whole comprehensive thing. And I'm like, wow, okay, because I've been mainly fighting what's going on in the US. So it's not like anywhere else stopped, right? We were supposed to be, people were thinking that we had slowed things down, and we didn't slow things down here. So I guess it was probably pretty foolish to think that things were slowed down anywhere else. And if nothing else, the Genius Act and what we're doing here has accelerated things elsewhere.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, the Genius Act is scaring me. I don't know. I don't want to get the ID, but like you said, I'm like, how am I going to feed my family if I can't work?
Yep. So on the plus side, everything that exists in the centralized world can be recreated in parallel in the private world. So on the one hand, there's a massive amount of economic opportunity if people want to take it. That the challenge is, and I've gotten to the point where I might just create some of these things and give it away or whatever, turn it over to somebody else to run. But I mean, it's not hard to create. The first thing we're to do is a healthcare marketplace, but then maybe a food marketplace or whatever. And then when people see tangibly what I'm talking about, then people realize, oh, wait, how can I survive in this new system? It's completely wide open,
right,
to build things in all of these different areas. And so, but I guess the problem that I have is we really don't have a lot of time. And I will say, the political prisoners of war that we have ongoing, if you look back at it now, which is why I wrote about this in my book, the reason that people like Ian Freeman and Roger Ver and Roman Storm were targeted was because they were effective at promoting alternatives. They were effective at promoting and building parallel systems. That is singularly why they were targeted and trapped, whatever happened to occur with their particular circumstances. And it's had its effect, because if they were free and able to be fully doing what they do best, we would be further along than we are right now. We are.
Yeah, Medici Ventures was doing in 2018 and 19.
Yep.
That was, full stack government blockchain stack.
Yeah, and so what's Pat? So, but I love Patrick, but I mean, it's just not, the last time I saw him, it's like, now people are talking about it's all this indictment bullshit again, and within the system, what could we have built in the last 6 years if we were building a blockchain tech stack for human civilization? How much further would we be if $500 million and 6 years of time went into that? We would actually have right now a parallel system that people could look to. Instead, right now, we're still we're still cobbling it together. We have the pieces. Now, I will say that stuff Byrne was working on wasn't private, which it turns out is critical. I think he has more faith in systems than he should.
I do too. I agree with you in that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. And time's running out, and it's almost to the point where I might have to just move in with the Amish.
The Amish aren't going to be safe.
No.
And subsistence is not the answer either. I think there's an optimistic future. I mean, again, I use AI, and I've even realized that, because some of the stuff that I've been doing has been, shocking. I mean, in terms of building, not only, it's not just building websites, but I mean, even I'm building an incubator, kind of an automated incubator to build these projects, these parallel systems. And then even the thought process that I go through is like creating a virtual advisory board, like down to the point where I may go to the next level and have avatars that, you basically train a simulated team based on actual people. And then you can actually even clone their voice and avatar. So you could actually have like a brainstorming session with a virtual team. And I mean,
useful.
It is useful. And I'm just like, so there is, and so in the end, what you start to realize is it makes you sharper because you start thinking about, okay, what really is my purpose? What are my values? Because as you're using the AI, you realize you can get the AI can be a tool to help you, but you really want to be very specific and clear about what is your own individual purpose and intent. And in that respect, it's a good tool because people lack in values and purpose. And so actually even using these tools can help that. Of course, that isn't necessarily how everybody uses it. And if you don't have a good starting point, then it might prevent you from developing those things. But like I said, there are two sides to it all. I don't have when we do this first principles things, I don't have answers for anything. I do think we have free will, but outside of that, I think everything is on the table. And I do think that the AI productivity increases. I mean, people talk about this all the time. I mean, I can see a situation where AI plus robots, we could see 1,000x increase in productivity. We could see a situation where people don't have to work for survival.
Oh yeah, if we could do basically cheap energy and have a benign DAO running a lot of the simple functions that we are of our government. Yeah, absolutely. We could get away from the having to concentrate all on feed and reproduction and start looking at the underfabric of reality and what it really is. You're right. It could be a great tool, but the people that are owning the AI don't have that in their mind. They don't want to free you or free me. They want to use it as a tool of control, like you said.
So I hold out hope that they have free will and that maybe there's a way to have a conversation where their perspective can be, as far as I could tell, and the best way I'd sum it up, and it's probably maybe somewhat inaccurate, but I can relate to some of it, is that we're dealing with Revenge of the Nerds, but with some people that are profoundly wounded, and they're basically taking out it. Their application of AI is based on spite. Now that can be corrected. I mean, again, I've studied Curtis Yarvin, I've dug into Peter Thiel, and Musk, and these are people that have a lot of, frankly, severe emotional baggage that they haven't dealt with, and they're kind of taking that out on everyone else.
You don't think they're pure psychopaths?
Maybe. And actually I get to this point where, as much as I believe in free will, I don't have a good answer for narcissists.
There is none.
Well, so that's actually one of my areas where I get stuck. I actually don't know what the resolution is on that.
What's the guy Craig? The guy's done all the emotional and personality stuff for the government, but he's out now, and he talks about narcissists and psychopaths, and there's not really a lot you can do about it. And cities basically breed psychopathic behavior. The ability to see how many times in the city do you see a wreck and just keep walking by it and don't feel anything?
Yep.
Whereas, you're in a small town, it's just a different breed. And it's not necessarily that psychopaths are in the city, but as I said, being in a city kind of breeds psychopathic behavior.
Yep.
Because you have to look out for yourself. I got to cut myself short here. I got an early morning. Did get a DM. You did get a DM a little earlier today about possibly talking about a board membership on X from the chick.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested in that.
Yeah. However, we can. I need to hook up offline and talk about a few details, but I think it's a really good opportunity with the right intentions behind it. So if we can hook up a little bit offline in the next day, it would be great.
Yep. Yeah. Happy to. All right. Well, have a good one. Yeah. And so please like and share. If you're listening, please like and share. The numbers are down on this. I don't know what the hell's going on, but please like and share. This is important, timely material for sure. And yeah, I hope to catch you. So I'll be on Thursday talking about Freedom Dollar. So
we'll catch you. Don't worry. We'll drop you another DM on X.
Awesome. All right, great. Well, I look forward to talking to you on that offline, and then hopefully see you on Thursday.
Sounds good. All right, Aaron.
Have a good night. All right, and for everyone else, yeah, I guess I'm gonna call this one somewhat early. I don't know if this is early. What time is it? Well, in any event, I'm gonna play. This is the song that I made for tonight's episode specifically. Actually, there were 2 songs for this week, but I'm gonna play. "Sign My Name in Light" is the song for this episode. So have a good night, and Thursday at 6 p.m. we will be talking about Freedom Dollar.
They told me it was safer, just a simple code to sign, a number for the future, but it didn't feel like mine.
Said the world was getting smaller, just a fingerprint away. But I can't hold my children through a screen of DNA.
Oh, it's easy to surrender when they promise you the sky. But freedom dies in comfort, one consent at a time. I won't sign my name in cold. I was born in blood and soul. You can take my data, you can read my eyes, but my heart's still mine to hold. I won't sign my name in cold. I'll sign my name in light.
They say it's just identity, they say it's just the way, but every scan's a promise that our souls will fade to gray.
No more numbers on the altar, no more saints of silicone. We were meant for love,
not logging on.
You can map my face, you can mark my tone, but you'll never write my song. The melody belongs to every heart that's still holding on. I won't sign my name in code. I was born in love, not sold. Every chain they draw in wire will melt it down with fire, fire. Oh, I'll sign my name in code. No, I'll sign my name in light. I'll sign my. Let the record show I was free.
Then my name was written in love, not circuitry.